The story begins with a hardcore gamer named Kanishi, who has just finished a game that took him a full 3 years to complete. After clearing it, he leans back in his chair and lets out a sigh, thinking about how boring and disappointing the game actually was. Despite the long time it took, it never truly challenged him. What Kanishi really wants is a game that will push him to his limits, something so difficult that it would take him at least 10 years to beat. He wants a real challenge, not something he can clear with enough patience. With that in mind, Kanishi immediately starts searching for his next game. He scrolls through different titles, reviews, and recommendations, but nothing catches his interest. Suddenly, his computer screen glitches and flickers. Strange text appears on the screen, offering him a game that never ends and is set in a fantasy world filled with magic. Kanishi's eyes widen in excitement. He has never heard of a game that never ends before, and the idea alone gets his heart racing. Without hesitation, he clicks on it. He is then asked to select the difficulty level. The options range from easy mode to hard mode, which already seems standard and uninteresting to him. However, as he scrolls down further, he notices an extra option at the bottom called Hell mode. This is something he has never seen in any game before. His excitement skyrockets as he realizes that this might finally be the challenge he has been looking for. Without a second thought, he selects Hell mode. Next, he chooses the Summoner class and confidently clicks the Start button. The moment he does, something strange happens. His screen flashes brightly, and before he can react, he gets sucked straight into his computer screen. The next thing he knows, he wakes up in a completely different world as a newborn baby, crying as he is born into a poor serf family. Shortly after his birth, a man picks him up gently and gives him a name. That name is Alan. Surprisingly, Alan does not feel upset about his situation. In his previous life, he was a 35-year-old broke gamer stuck, working a dead-end job with no future. Compared to that, this new life feels like a fresh start. Being reincarnated gives him a second chance to live a better and more meaningful life. At the moment, Alan is only 1 year old, so he cannot speak yet. However, he has no trouble thinking clearly inside his mind. He can organize his thoughts, understand what people say around him, and observe everything carefully. He also realizes that the language spoken in this world is Japanese, meaning it is the common language here. Alan and his family live in a frontier village where pioneers pay taxes to a ruling lord in exchange for the right to cultivate the land. The village is still new and undeveloped, so it does not even have a proper name yet. Alan's father is named Rodden, a hardworking and caring man who does everything he can to support his family. Judging by his looks and behavior, Alan guesses that Rodden is around 20 years old. His mother's name is Derja, and Alan assumes she is likely in her late teens. Watching how close and loving his parents are with each other, Alan figures it is only a matter of time before he ends up with younger siblings as well. Later that night, after Alan is put to bed, he lies there quietly and starts thinking. He suddenly remembers that in this world, he is supposed to be a summoner. Curious, he decides to try opening a status window to check his stats. However, the moment he attempts to do that, something unexpected happens. Instead of a simple window appearing, a large book suddenly materializes and floats above him in the air. Alan shrieks in shock at the sudden sight of it, completely startled by what just appeared. His shout immediately grabs his parents' attention. Realizing this is bad, Alan panics and quickly makes the floating book disappear before they can see it. His parents rush in to check on him, but when they see that nothing strange is happening, they assume he was just making noise in his sleep. Thinking it is nothing serious, they quietly leave the room. Once they are gone, Alan carefully brings the book back out again. He soon learns that the floating book is actually a grimoire that contains all the details about his stats and abilities. As he reads through it, he confirms that he really is a summoner, just like the class he chose in the game. The book explains that he can summon creatures, but because of his young age, he is currently limited to summoning only insects and beasts. Even so, Alan feels extremely excited. He wants to summon something right away, so he tries summoning an insect. However, no matter how many times he tries, nothing happens at all. After several failed attempts, Alan forces himself to calm down and think carefully. He remembers another skill listed in the grimoire and decides to try using his create skill first. When he activates it, something finally happens. A crafting card for an insect appears right in front of him. Seeing this, Alan realizes that he needs to create the creature first before he can summon it. Now that he has the crafting card, he prepares to summon the insect properly. quickly, just as he is about to do it. His mother comes in to check on him. Alan reacts instantly, lying back down and pretending to be asleep. Even after his mother leaves the room, he notices that he is suddenly very tired. His eyelids feel heavy, and he realizes that forcing himself to stay awake is pointless. Deciding it is better to rest, he chooses to go to sleep and try summoning again the next morning. The following morning, when his parents are not watching him, Alan carefully brings out his grimoire again. This time, he successfully completes the summoning. In an instant, a giant grasshopper appears and jumps straight onto his face. Alan panics, but quickly recovers and tries giving it orders, telling it to obey him. Unfortunately, the grasshopper shows no interest in listening and simply hops away on its own. Confused, Alan checks the grimoire again, hoping it might explain what is going on. He finds the grasshopper's stats written inside the book. The grimoire also informs him that he needs to give his summoned creature a name. After thinking for a moment, Alan decides that Denka sounds like a decent name for a grasshopper. He then looks at his own stats and realizes that summoning Denka has actually increased his abilities. However, before he can celebrate, his mother suddenly walks into the room. She immediately notices Denka, since she is extremely afraid of insects. She reacts without thinking and instantly squashes the grasshopper. Just like that, Denka is gone. After a few more days of playing around with his skills and testing different things, Alan finally manages to summon another creature. This time, it is a small mouse, which he decides to name Mousy. Unfortunately, Mousy turns out to be just as unintelligent as Denka was. He does not really listen to orders and mostly does whatever he wants. However, unlike Denka, Mousy has a useful ability called Scurry, which allows him to move around the room at an extremely fast speed. While Mousy is still not very obedient, he will at least use Scurry whenever Alan tells him to, which makes Alan feel slightly better about the summon. Alan spends the rest of the day carefully studying his grimoire. He reads through every page again and again, trying to understand how summoning really works and what he needs to do to summon stronger monsters that can properly follow commands. He thinks about different methods, possible conditions, and skill combinations, but no matter how much he studies, he cannot find a clear answer. In the end, all his effort leads to nothing, and he is left feeling a little frustrated. That afternoon, Alan's father, Rodden, finally returns home. His clothes are stained with blood, and it is clear that he has just come back from a dangerous hunt. Rodden proudly tells Alan that he managed to take down a massive boar. He goes on to describe just how large and terrifying it was, and then asks Alan if he wants to go see it. Hearing this, Alan becomes incredibly excited. This would be the first real monster he has ever seen in this world. Seeing how thrilled his son is, Rodden decides to take him along. This is Alan's first time leaving the house, so he feels thrilled. At that moment, his father points toward a flock of birds known as albahiron. During this season, they fly north together, signaling the arrival of fall. Rodden then explains to Alan that he named him after the albahiron. After about a 10-minute walk, they arrive at the spot where the boar is being cut up. Several people are already there, working together to process the monster. At first, Alan is filled with excitement as he stares at it up close. However, after examining it more carefully, that excitement slowly turns into fear. Seeing such a large and powerful monster in person makes him realize just how terrifying it truly is. Alan understands that if he ever had to fight something like this right now, he would stand no chance at all. After a short while, one of their neighbors, a man named Gerda, walks over to Rodden and congratulates him on defeating the boar. Soon after, the other villagers nearby begin cheering as well. They all know that taking down a boar like that is no easy task and that it is a great achievement. Rodden then formally introduces Alan to Gerda. Gerda is left completely speechless when he sees how polite and well-mannered Alan is, especially considering that he is only 1-year-old. Putting that aside, Alan asks Gerda how strong a boar actually is. Gerda explains that boars are naturally C-rank monsters, and that it usually takes around 20 people working together to bring just one of them down. Hearing this, Alan quietly takes note of the information. He realizes that this gives him a clear benchmark for what kind of strength exists in this world, and what he might have to face in the future. About 10 months later, Alan receives some exciting news. He discovers that he has finally reached level 2 as a summoner. This level up allows him to create G-rank creature cards, which is a big step forward for him. On top of that, he gains a brand new skill that lets him fuse his summoned creatures together. The best part of all is that his inventory space doubles. This means he can now hold twice as many buffs as before, greatly increasing his potential strength. That night, after finishing During dinner, Alan feels more excited than ever. With his new level, new skill, and expanded inventory, he eagerly prepares to test out his fusion technique for the very first time. But Alan soon ends up feeling disappointed when he realizes that he still cannot use his fusion technique on his cards, even when his MP is completely full. No matter how hard he tries or how carefully he follows the process, the fusion simply does not activate. This frustrates him, but he understands that he is still too young and not strong enough yet. Time passes, and by the time Alan turns 3 years old, he has made clear and noticeable progress on his path as a summoner. After many attempts and much practice, he finally succeeds in using his fusion technique on several of his cards. Through this process, he manages to craft a bird card, and the bird he summons from it is named Chappie. Chappie has a special ability called voice mimicry, which allows him to perfectly imitate anything Alan says. When Alan hears Chappie copy his voice, he immediately realizes how useful this ability could be. He imagines using it to confuse enemies, lure monsters into traps, or create distractions during battle. As Alan looks at everything he has learned so far, he feels satisfied with how deep and complex this world is. He honestly admits to himself that this world feels like the peak of hardcore gaming, far beyond anything he ever experienced in his previous life. By the time it reaches 3 o'clock in the afternoon, one of Alan's friends, a girl named Krina, comes over for a playdate. As usual, they start playing knights and sword fighting with wooden sticks. At first, Alan underestimates her, thinking that winning will be easy for him. However, to his surprise, Krina is much faster and more agile than he expected. She moves quickly, dodges his attacks, and strikes back before he can react. Alan struggles to keep up with her pace, and before he realizes it, he ends up losing the fight. By the end of the day, Alan is completely worn out and beaten badly by Krina. His body aches and his pride is bruised, but instead of feeling discouraged, he quietly vows to himself that he will become stronger before their next battle. That night, important news is revealed to the family. Derja announces that she is pregnant. Hearing this, Alan tells his father that he wants to help with harvesting the potatoes, since his mother will not be able to help as much anymore. Deep down, Alan knows he will be fine doing physical labor because he now has the stamina of a grown adult. However, his parents do not know that. They gently tell him that a child his age should not have to work and that he should focus on playing and having fun instead. They encourage him to keep spending time with Krina since they have noticed how happy he looks when they play nights together. They also mention that they are really looking forward to Alan's appraisal ceremony. Alan has no idea what that is, so Derja explains that when he turns 5 years old, there will be a divine ceremony to determine what kind of talent he possesses. They truly hope that Alan will receive a good talent, one that could finally free their family from life as serfs. A few months later, during the winter season, Alan accidentally forgets to put Denka away. Because of this, his mother suddenly sees the insect. Terrified, Derja slips and falls to the ground. When Rodden rushes in to check on her, Derja tells him that her water has broken and that the baby is coming. Krina happens to be nearby at the time, since she and Alan were having another playdate. Rodden quickly asks Krina to go get her parents because they have experience helping with childbirth. Not long after, Gerda and his wife, Matilda, arrive to help Derja. Matilda takes charge of the situation and prepares to deliver the baby. She immediately orders all the men out of the house, saying she needs privacy to work properly. The long night passes, and by the next morning, the boys wake up to the sound of a baby crying. They rush over and find that the baby has been safely delivered. Derja asks Rodden to name the child. Without thinking too deeply about it, Rodden decides to name him Mash. Derja instantly loves the name, but after thinking about it for a few seconds, she wonders if the name came from a monster. Rodden admits that it did, but Derja cannot deny that it sounds good. She starts laughing, and everyone else joins in. As they laugh together, Alan quietly watches them. Thinking back on everything, Alan realizes that he never truly understood why he was reincarnated in the first place. Aside from his desperate wish to play a hardcore game with terrible balance, he remembers how miserable and meaningless his old life felt and realizes that he is completely fine leaving it behind. In this new world, he feels free, unrestrained, and full of possibilities. More than anything else, he knows that this new family is the best part of his new life. He is not sure how he will do it yet, but Alan makes a silent promise to himself. No matter what it takes, he will free his family from the harsh life of being serfs. Time passes, and by the time Alan turns 5 years old, Alan's father takes him on a walk through a wide flower field and begins telling him about the appraisal ceremony. According to him, it is a special ceremony that every child in their village must take part in once they turn 5 years old. If a child is discovered to possess a talent, it could allow both the child and their family to rise up and escape their life as serfs. However, Rodden explains to Alan that it will not be easy at all, because there will be many competitors since their village is very densely populated. Along the way, they run into Krina and her father, and the four of them decide to travel together to a nearby commoner village. Not long after, they arrive at the commoner village, and Alan is shocked that the people living there are even considered commoners, as they are well groomed and wear clothes that are much nicer than his own. Shortly after this moment, the appraisal ceremony is ready to begin, so the priests slowly open the large main door, and first they ask the common people to show respect to Elmia, the god of creation. After that, they continue by saying that heroes in the kingdom do not only come from people with high rank, power, or status, but can also come from ordinary serfs. Alan hears this and immediately knows it is true, because when he was reading the game's epilogue, it clearly said that classes like the hero and sword lord must begin from a low social class. At first, he believed this was only a boring game rule with no real meaning, but he soon realizes that it applies to the entire world. Because of this rule, everyone, no matter their status or background, must take part in the ceremony. After that explanation is finished, the commoners calmly move forward and slowly make their way inside the building. Once inside, Alan notices a statue standing at the center and assumes it must be the god worshipped in this world, Elmia. Not long after, the appraisal ceremony starts, beginning with the village chief and his son, Palomas. Palomas steps forward toward the crystal ball and places his hand on it, causing the screen to light up and announce that he has the talent of becoming a merchant. His father immediately jumps with joy and rushes over to hug him, relieved as he realizes that his son is not useless after all. Alan watches in complete awe when all of a sudden his grimoire appears floating in front of him and starts writing down several numbers on its pages. This makes him realize that attributes are now being shown as clear values instead of hidden numbers. What he likes the most is that he is the only one who can see the grimoire at all, which means he can freely use it however he wants without anyone noticing. The ceremony continues as the children happily celebrate with their parents after receiving their new skills, but sadly, not everyone is lucky enough to gain a talent, leaving some of them feeling disappointed. The next child is Dagora, and he places his hand on the crystal, causing it to light up. The priest informs him that his talent is being an axe user. Dagora immediately jumps with joy and runs over to his father to celebrate. One by one, everyone receives their talent judgment and leaves the area, until only Alan and Krina remain, standing there with their parents. Krina quickly rushes up to the crystal ball, excited and eager to discover what kind of talent she has. The moment she touches it, a bright light bursts out from the crystal, and when the time comes to announce her talent, even the priests are shocked by the result. Most of her stats are nearly maxed out, and she is revealed to have the talent of a sword lord, which is known as one of the rarest and strongest talents. Her father is overjoyed, believing that his only daughter might finally be his way out of the trenches. But Krina herself does not look very happy, because she actually wanted to become a simple swordsman instead. Alan is not surprised at all, since he always believed there was something special about her. He is also excited, hoping his parents will learn that he is a summoner, so he confidently walks up to the crystal to have his own talent revealed. He places his hand on it, and a blinding light bursts out, sending him flying before he crashes to the ground. Rodden quickly rushes over to one of the priests and asks if his son has awakened a unique talent, but instead, the priest announces that Alan has no talent at all. Rodden does not look upset in the slightest. Instead, he calmly holds Alan by the shoulders and tells him that it is time for them to go home. The two of them head back home afterward, where Derja and Alan's little brother, Mash, are already waiting to give them a warm and cheerful welcome. Later that night, Rodden sits down with Alan and tells him not to feel bad about me not having a talent, explaining that nothing like that would ever change how much they love him. Even so, Alan still feels a little disappointed about the fact that he did not receive a talent of his own. Despite that, he remains grateful and happy that he was born into such a caring and loving family. Later that night, Alan lies awake in bed with his grimoire open in front of him. As he looks through it again, he notices that every single one of his attributes is listed as E rank. At the very least, today helped him realize one important thing. He is the only person in this world playing on Hell mode. mode. Alan assumes that the ranking system most likely reflects how much growth a person can expect when they level up. Because of that, he believes the reason all of his abilities are E rank is due to him choosing the Hell mode difficulty, which probably reduces his progress to 100th of what it is normally supposed to be. That can only mean the stats shown in the grimoire are just a small fraction of his true potential. Alan realizes that a difficulty like this is usually where most people would quit, but not him. He is on a mission to prove that he is capable of conquering any hardcore game he chooses to face. The next day, Alan and his family head over to Krina's house to celebrate her Sword Lord talent. Along the way, Alan cannot help but notice that his father seems upset about something, even though he clearly does not want to talk about it. That bad mood follows Rodden all the way to Krina's house. When it is time for everyone to start drinking together, Rodden and Gerda begin bickering over something completely pointless. Alan watches them argue and wonders if his father's attitude could be caused by jealousy over Krina becoming a Sword Lord. However, he quickly dismisses the idea, knowing that his father is not that petty of a person. The argument continues to escalate as Rodden and Gerda shout back and forth at each other. Suddenly, Gerda drops a bombshell, revealing that Rodden once said he wanted to cut all ties with their family. Everyone who hears this is left completely shocked. Rodden admits that it is true, but explains that it is not because he wants to. He says that Krina's talent is 1 in a million and could even put her on the path to becoming a noble. Because of that, he believes they should not risk her future by continuing to associate with serfs like them. Even after that explanation, the two continue arguing for a while longer, until their wives finally step in and slap some sense into them. Matilda and Derja then explain the truth, revealing that all 4 of them are childhood friends who grew up together in the same village. Apparently, Gerda and Rodden have always been thick-headed meatheads who were constantly looking for excuses to fight each other, though becoming fathers managed to calm them down a little. Reminiscing about old memories helps everyone cool off, and they spend the rest of the night enjoying themselves and sharing liquor together. The next day, rumors about Krina's talent spread quickly, and before long, the Order of Knights begins planning a special visit to see her in person. Shortly after that, the knights arrive at the village on horseback. As soon as they do, Krina and her father rush over to the knight commander to properly introduce her. While they speak, Alan watches from a distance and begins to wonder if this means Krina will have to leave the village and become a full-fledged knight someday. He understands that this is the path she is meant to take, but even so, he admits to himself that he is going to miss her when that day comes. After the commander speaks with Gerda for a while, he suddenly reaches a harsh conclusion. He claims that they may have been lying about Krina possessing the Sword Lord talent. Because of that, he declares that she must prove it in a duel against the vice captain. If she fails, she will be executed on the spot, since lying about one's talent is punishable by death. Gerda immediately refuses, unable to accept why someone as old and experienced as the vice captain would be forced to spar with a 5-year-old child. Alan feels the same way, but he knows there is nothing he can do to stop it. Krina looks over at the sword she will be using for the duel and notices how shiny and beautiful it is. Excited by that alone, she immediately agrees to the duel and tells her father not to worry. Hearing this, Gerda does not even know what to say anymore and is left completely stunned. With that, the duel between Krina and the vice captain, Reborn, begins. For the first few moments, the two appear evenly matched. However, Reborn soon uses his overwhelming strength to overpower Krina and slam her into a wall. Gerda sees this and desperately tries to intervene, but the knights restrain him and hold him back. At that moment, the knight commander already believes the fight is over. To his surprise, Krina suddenly stands back up, surrounded by a faint blue aura. She charges straight at Reborn and unleashes a barrage of sword slashes that are 10 times faster and stronger than her earlier attacks. Reborn struggles to keep up, and before long, his sword is sliced clean in half. Seeing this, the commander immediately calls an end to the duel. The vice captain is left in complete disbelief, unable to comprehend how his 24-year-old self was just defeated by a 5-year-old girl. The crowd erupts into cheers for Krina, now fully convinced that she truly is the Sword Lord. Gerda feels overwhelming pride as he watches his daughter overcome impossible odds. Shortly after, the commander approaches Gerda and declares that there is no longer any doubt about Krina's talent. He says he would like the opportunity to discuss her future with him. Although Gerda is still angry about being forced to put Krina through such a dangerous trial, he agrees to talk. They head to the village chief's residence. residence, where the discussion begins over dinner. The Knight Commander introduces himself as Xenof and explains that he was sent by the Lord of the Land to confirm whether a Sword Lord truly existed. After witnessing the duel firsthand, he confidently confirms it. Xenof then announces another decision made by the Lord of the Land. Although the village was originally meant to be named after the village chief, the discovery of a Sword Lord has changed everything. To honor her, the village will now be named Krina Village. After that, Xenof apologizes to Gerda for subjecting his daughter to such a brutal test. Gerda is not the type to hold grudges, so he accepts the apology and lets it go. Xenof then tells Gerda to continue raising Krina the same way he always has. Once she reaches the age of 12, she will be sent to the Royal Academy to study and fully master her talent. Hearing about this, Alan becomes excited at the thought of an academy filled with people who possess talents like hers. However, as the conversation continues, Alan starts to wonder why Dagora, one of the children who received the axe talent, is present as well. Xenof acknowledges Dagora and tells him to work as hard as possible to train and earn admission into the academy someday. With that settled, Xenof turns his attention to Alan and notices something unusual. He finds it strange that Alan has both dark hair and dark eyes, which is rare. When Xenof learns that Alan is the son of Rodden the boar hunter, he immediately stands up and pays his respects. Xenof explains that Rodden is known as a legendary figure in the village, a man responsible for handling most of the dangerous tasks during hunts. He is considered a true hero by the people. As Alan listens to all of this, he feels proud to hear his father being praised so highly. In his heart, Alan realizes that his dad really is a hero after all. Later that evening, Gerda and Rodden bid each other farewell. Rodden believes that Krina may become a hero someday, but he is even more impressed that she was acknowledged by the Lord. He then tells Alan to continue working hard, saying he is destined for great things since he is his son after all. Just then, Alan pulls out a few fruits he stole from the meeting, and Rodden does the same, causing them both to laugh together. Sometime later, Alan gets really hyped up because he has finally leveled up his summoner skill. His grimoire now says he has an enhanced skill, so he wonders if that means he will be able to summon stronger things. He gets even more excited as he thinks about how he will eventually be able to summon something cool like a dragon. It took him 2 years to reach this milestone, so when he thinks about it, he realizes that it was actually worth all the effort and waiting. Later that night, Derja and Rodden announce that they are going to have yet another child, and their guess is that it is going to be a girl. Because of that, they all start thinking up possible names for the baby. Alan's grimoire suddenly appears, and after he looks inside it, he sees the name of the god of creation written there. Without thinking too much, he suggests that they call the baby Elmia. His parents quickly tell him to shut up and warn him that they do not speak the name of their god in vain. Alan realizes that he messed up, so he quickly tries to change the topic to avoid more trouble. To do that, Alan points out that his dad's scar is already healing up. Rodden explains that he got the scar when he passed one of the trials of the gods during a boar hunt. Alan has no idea what a trial of the gods is, so Rodden takes the time to explain it to him. He says that it is a special moment that sometimes happens while they are hunting. During that moment, they feel a sudden burst of energy that removes all their wounds and exhaustion, making them feel refreshed and strong again. When Alan hears this, he realizes that this is just how people in this world describe leveling up. It suddenly makes a lot more sense to him. Even though his summoning skill has gone up, he understands that he is still going to remain at level 1 unless he manages to defeat some real monsters. Just improving a skill is not enough. He knows that if he truly wants to grow stronger, he needs real combat experience. Because of this, Alan decides that he needs to take hunting more seriously. He asks his dad if he can come along on a hunt so that he can gain experience and maybe even level up for real. However, his dad immediately turns him down. Rodden reminds him that hunting is not some kind of game or training exercise. He tells Alan that it has real dangers and serious consequences, and that mistakes during a hunt can cost people their lives. Hearing this, Alan understands that getting stronger will not be easy, but that doesn't mean he'll be willing to give up just like that. Later that night, right before Alan goes to bed, he pulls out his grimoire and sees that he has just received a message from Elmia. The message explains that during the appraisal ceremony, his stats were shown as E rank because he is on hell mode. However, the message also shows his true raw stats. Alan is relieved and happy to see that his real stats are actually on the same level as Krina's. This makes him feel much more confident about his future. Feeling curious and ready to experiment, Alan decides to try using his enhanced skill on Denka. Just as he expected, the skill amplifies all of the stats Denka already had. When Alan materializes Denka, even though Denka has not grown much bigger, Alan can tell just by looking at him that he has clearly been enhanced and has become stronger. Just then, Derja walks into the room and spots the bug. She gets scared when she sees it and quickly squashes it with her foot. Even so, he does not give up. Alan spends the rest of the night summoning and testing his skills. By morning, he comes to an important realization. The enhancements he puts on a card do not go away. This means that as long as he has enough MP to spare, he should enhance all the cards in his inventory to make them stronger over time. Shortly after that, Rodden heads out to go hunting. Everyone tells him goodbye and wishes him luck before he leaves. Later, while Alan is doing some chores around the house, he realizes that he has not been able to pull off any new fusions, even after trying several different combinations. He starts to feel a little frustrated. The only last possible combination he has not tried yet is a bird and an insect. When he finally tries to fuse them, he smiles when he sees the result at first. However, that smile quickly fades when he realizes that the new card that was created is just an apple. At first, he feels disappointed, thinking that the fusion failed in a strange way, but then he decides to carefully check the buffs on the card. As he reads through them, his smile returns. He realizes that he has finally gotten a creature that has an MP buff. This is a huge breakthrough for him because it means he will be able to do far more actions and summons over the course of a single day. Before this, he believed it would take him several decades to level up. Now, with this creature's MP buff, he realizes that leveling up could be cut down to just a couple of years instead. Alan materializes the card, and the strange apple creature is formed in front of him. Looking at it, Alan decides that it needs a proper name. After thinking for a moment, he smiles and decides to name the creature Apo. After a little while, Apo shows Alan his special skill. Apo sinks into the ground and then grows into a tall stem that releases the sweet scent of an essential oil. Alan is busy breathing in the smell when he suddenly sees his mom coming toward him. He quickly tries to get rid of the stem, but it does not disappear. His mom walks over and notices the stem, but she does not think much of it because it gives off such a pleasant and relaxing smell. Later in the day, Krina comes over for training. During their sparring, Krina completely wipes the floor with Alan and easily defeats him again and again. However, after their training is over, Krina admits that Alan has gotten a bit tougher than before. Alan is shocked to hear this and immediately checks his grimoire. When he looks at it, he sees that both his endurance and attack skills have been buffed. He starts to wonder if Apo's sweet-smelling aroma might have given him these boosts. However, he has no real way to prove it or test it properly, so for now, he decides to let the thought go. As time goes on, Alan realizes that they now have a lot of hay thanks to Apo. After running a couple of simple tests, Alan finally understands how Apo's skill, Aroma, really works. He learns that Aroma can shorten MP recovery time from 6 hours down to 5 hours. This allows him to do more activities and more summoning in a single day, which is a big advantage for his growth. Even so, Alan cannot help but feel uneasy because it always feels like he never has enough time to do everything he wants and needs to do. Later that night, Alan and his mom start to get worried because Rodden has not come home yet and it is much later than he is supposed to be. The worry slowly turns into fear as more time passes. Then, they suddenly hear loud noises coming from outside. When they rush out to see what is happening, they see several adventurers carrying Rodden on a stretcher. He is clearly badly injured and barely conscious. When they finally bring Rodden inside, Gerda explains what happened. He tells them that Rodden took a boar fang to the gut, which is what left him in such a terrible condition. They managed to keep Rodden alive for now thanks to a special healing herb. Gerda admits that if not for that herb, Rodden would already be dead, even with the herb. However, it is still not enough to fully heal him, and he is left with a large and dangerous wound. Alan asks Gerda how something like this could have happened. Gerda explains that this was not just the fault of a single commoner. Normally, commoners do not even take part in boar hunts because they are far too dangerous. But this year was different. Many commoners volunteered to join the hunt because they had heard stories about Rodden being a great hunting hero. They believed that as long as Rodden was there, they would be safe. Gerda admits that neither he nor Rodden felt comfortable allowing commoners to come along on such a dangerous hunt. However, since they could not refuse the orders of the chieftain, they had no choice but to let the commoners join, even though it put everyone at greater risk. The commoners students were taught the proper formations and tactics for what to do if anything went wrong. However, as soon as things actually did go wrong, fear took over them, and they started to panic and break formation. Instead of following the plan, they began to run around in confusion. One of the commoners was just about to get stabbed, but that was when Rodden stepped in and ended up being the one that got stabbed. Later that night, Rodden finally wakes up, and everyone is relieved to see that he made it through. However, Alan cannot help but blame himself. He realizes that he was mostly useless during the crisis. Even though he could have helped more, he understands that he has been too focused on leveling up and improving his own abilities. And because of that, he chose not to pay enough attention to what was happening around him and to the people who needed him. He remembers that he has a family he needs to protect, and he quietly makes it his personal mission to become strong enough to truly protect them. Shortly after, Gerda arrives and drops off Rodden's portion of the meat they hunted. After that, Gerda tells Rodden not to worry about anything during the winter and to focus only on getting better. That is when Alan also speaks up. He tells his dad to rest and take it easy, because from now on, Alan is going to take care of things and provide for the family while Rodden is recovering. The next day, Alan keeps his word. He does hard work like fetching water from the well and carrying it all the way back to fill their reserves. Gerda then shows Alan how to harvest crops from the farm. At first, Gerda thinks the work might be too much for Alan to handle. However, to his surprise, Alan harvests each stem easily and without slowing down. This makes Gerda realize that Alan is a lot stronger than he first thought. Not long after, the chieftain visits their home along with the commoner who caused Rodden's injury. The commoner immediately apologizes to Rodden for what happened. Everyone expects Rodden to be angry or hold a grudge. Instead, to their surprise, Rodden calmly tells him to be more careful next time. Seeing this, Alan feels a deep sense of admiration for his father and realizes how noble and kind he truly is. Later that day, Alan heads to the flower field and clears part of it so he can use the area to set traps to catch some meat. He summons a couple of small frogs and uses them to help put his plan into motion. After setting everything up, Alan hides in the bushes and waits for something to take the bait. He waits for a long time and nothing happens. Alan starts to think it might be over and that his plan failed. Then, suddenly, a giant bird flies in and lands in the cleared area. As Alan takes a closer look, his heart drops. He realizes that this is not just a normal bird. It is an albahiron, a dangerous B-rank monster. Alan only meant to attract small animals and birds, and he never expected something like this to show up. Alan knows he has no real chance of beating a monster like this, so his first thought is to turn around and run for his life. But just then, his system lights up and announces that his enhanced skill has reached level 2. Seeing this, Alan decides that it might be worth taking the risk to test it out on the albahiron. Alan charges in and uses his sword to attack, but the albahiron easily knocks him away. After that, Alan summons several wolves, and they rush forward to bite and attack the albahiron. For a moment, Alan thinks he might actually have a chance to win, but things quickly turn bad when he sees that the albahiron simply eats all of his wolves without much effort. With no other options left, Alan tries to attack again with his sword, but this time he is knocked away even harder than before. The albahiron moves closer and stands over him, clearly trying to eat him. Alan raises his sword to defend himself, his body shaking, as he wonders if this is truly the end for him. As his last resort, he summons 2 leeches, and they immediately begin to suck up some of the albahiron's blood. This starts to weaken the albahiron a little, and it also gives him a short moment to think carefully about what his next move should be. He knows that he is a lot weaker now because he has lost a couple of his summons and buffs, but he believes it should not be a serious problem, because he already has a clear plan to take this beast down with just one strong and final strike. Alan summons his wolves again and orders both the wolves and the leeches to lunge forward and attack at the same time. While they rush in, he jumps in as well and delivers a decisive sword strike directly to the albahiron's head. The attack is strong enough to knock the albahiron down and keep it down for good. His grimoire then notifies him that he has just defeated an albahiron and that he has gained 100 XP. When he sees this message, he gets very hyped up and excited, and he takes a moment to celebrate his victory. After that, Alan takes the albahiron back to his family, and they are both surprised that someone someone they used to see as a wimp like him could defeat a D-ranked monster like that completely on his own. Jirda then offers to help him bleed the Albahiron out properly. After tying the Albahiron up, Jirda gives Alan a detailed rundown on how the meat of the beast is supposed to be cut and separated, and he also explains which parts of the monster are safe and edible. Jirda also adds that monsters all have magic stones inside them, and that every magic stone found in any monster above D rank falls under the tax laws of their kingdom. However, Jirda does not really see this as a big problem, since the stone would be useless to poor serfs like them anyway. Even so, Jirda believes that they will be able to get a better price for their share of the meat from the chieftain after they explain that Alan was the one doing the hunting, since his father was injured and unable to do it himself. The next day, at the chieftain's office, the two of them follow through with their plan of using Rodden's injury as leverage. At first, the chieftain insists that they should only receive the smaller cut. However, after they continue to pressure him by reminding him about how badly injured Rodden is and how a kid like Alan had to risk his life, the chieftain finally gives in and agrees to give them a bigger cut, just like they had planned from the beginning. The chieftain tells them that they will be able to keep all of the meat for themselves, while he will only take the wings and the magic stones. However, Alan tries to go the extra mile and asks the chieftain if they will be allowed to continue doing this kind of deal in the future as well. Jirda does his best to help convince the chieftain, and after taking some time to think about it, the chieftain finally agrees to their terms and allows them to continue under the same arrangement. 3 days later, Alan uses the same tactic as last time to face 2 more Albahirons. The fact that he was able to defeat one before has given him much more confidence, so this time he is able to defeat both of them with the help of his leeches, his wolves, and his wooden sword, and he does it in record time. Alan has been going out to hunt once every 3 days since beating the first one, but this is the first time he did not lose any of his summons, so he is very happy with the results. Alan's grimoire then lights up and acknowledges that he has just defeated 2 Albahirons and gained 200 XP. More importantly, it also informs him that his level has increased and that he has reached level 2. He becomes extremely excited when he sees this and immediately checks his stats. When he looks, he sees that all of his HP and MP have fully recovered after leveling up. However, he also notices that his stat increase is only about 60% of what it should normally be. He does not think too deeply about it, and he assumes that maybe he does not get the full benefits since he has only just reached this level. Even so, he is still very happy and is just glad to see that all of his hard work has finally paid off. As he thinks about it more, he starts to believe that this might be the trial of the gods that Rodden told him about, and he honestly feels amazing about it. He realizes that he will have to let his family know the truth sooner or later. Later that day, Alan arrives back home, and Rodden is surprised to see that he managed to catch 2 Albahirons in a single day. After that, Alan meets up with Krina for some sword training. However, even while he is in the middle of fighting and training, his mind keeps thinking about how and when he is going to hunt more Albahirons. Since it is migration season and there are a lot of Albahirons around, he believes that if he works hard enough, he may be able to reach level 3 by hunting about 20 more of them. Alan's thoughts are suddenly interrupted when Krina lands a heavy blow to his head, which clearly shows that she has won the match. After acknowledging her victory, she simply waves goodbye to him and leaves. Later that night, Alan decides that it is time to let his parents in on the truth about how he has been able to defeat those Albahirons so easily. However, he knows that he cannot tell them that he got pulled into some random game he saw on the internet, because they would definitely think he has gone crazy. Because of that, Alan comes up with a better explanation. He tells them that when he was only 1 year old, he heard an oracle from Elmia, the god of creation. Alan explains to them that an oracle basically means that he is smarter and physically stronger than the average person. On top of that, he says that it also means he will go through trials that go beyond what even 100 men could normally accomplish. Hearing this, Rodden already understands what is going on and can tell that Alan must have already gone through the trial of the gods. Rodden noticed earlier that morning that the cut on Alan's face was already gone, so he realizes that this is the only explanation that makes sense. However, Derja does not understand how this could even be possible, especially since Alan's appraisal results from last year said that he had no talent at all. That is when Alan mentions that he received another oracle from Lord Elmia a few months ago. He explains that the reason his attributes were ranked so low during the appraisal appraisal ceremony is because they take the slow progression of his trials into account. He also explains that the reason he was judged to have no talent was because his talent was actually too new to be properly recognized at the time. Rawdon is shocked when he hears this, because it means that Alan actually does have a talent after all. When Rawdon asks Alan what that talent is, Alan tells him that he is not sure, because Lord Elmia did not give him the full details. Alan feels bad about lying to his father, but he knows that he cannot say anything about being a summoner. He is afraid that some people would react the wrong way if they found out that he can summon and control monsters, and he also knows that he definitely cannot tell them anything about being reincarnated. In the end, there just simply embraces Alan and praises him for being so brave, especially considering how young he is. Rawdon then asks Alan what he plans to do next, and Alan replies that for now, all he wants to do is prove himself worthy by passing all of the trials. Rawdon is proud to hear that answer, but he also tells Alan not to hesitate to ask for help if he ever needs it. Alan thanks both of his parents for being so understanding and for giving him their full support. After that, Rawdon tells Alan that it would be best if he kept this a secret for now, because it would be very bad if people started to mistake him for a false prophet. However, Rawdon says that Gerda will be the only exception, since Gerda is always bragging about how cool Krina is as a sword lord. Rawdon says that now he will finally get the chance to boast about how cool his son is as well. By the time winter comes, Alan takes one of the albahirons they had stored and begins cutting it up. After that, he heads into town with Gerda to trade the meat for supplies. Gerda has already heard the news about Alan being blessed and tested by Lord Elmia, and Gerda honestly is not surprised at all, because he always believed there was something special about Alan. As they travel together, the two of them continue talking, and Alan brings up the topic of the difference between commoners and serfs. Gerda explains that most of the difference comes down to social status and taxes. He explains that serfs are under a completely different tax system, where they must pay 3 gold coins for each adult and 1 gold coin for each child every year. After hearing that, Alan asks what it would take for a serf to become a commoner. Gerda explains that it would require paying a tribute of 10 gold coins per person in the family. He also mentions that there are rumors about a baron sometimes rewarding people with commoner status, but he makes it clear that those are only rumors. When Alan hears all of this, he realizes that since his mother is about to have another baby, it would take their family 50 gold coins to become commoners, because they will soon be a family of 5. Alan spends the rest of the day trading with Gerda, and he starts to get the hang of how trading works. By the end of the day, he walks back home with a large bundle of firewood on his back. Realizing that he now mostly understands how bartering works, he also realizes that he can do some market research the next time he comes into town. The next time Alan goes trading, he does it all by himself. While there, he carefully documents the market value and barter value for every single item so that he can use that information to help himself in the future. Later, Alan walks into a herb shop and asks the merchant if there is any medicine that can recover MP. The merchant immediately responds that they do not have anything like that, because such items are far too expensive for the shop to carry. That said, Alan just takes a look around at all of the herbs and medicines on the shelves, and he realizes that it would be extremely difficult to document all of them manually. So, he focuses very hard and, just by thinking about it, ends up drawing all of the herbs into his grimoire without touching anything physically. After that, Alan asks the merchant if he has any Mueller's flowers in stock. However, the merchant suddenly gets very worked up at hearing that name because of the last time he sold one. The merchant explains that some time ago, Gerda burst into the shop and demanded to buy a Mueller's flower. He insisted on getting it because a friend of his was sick, but he did not even pay in full at the time and promised to pay the rest later. The merchant still has not received the full payment, and on top of that, it was the last Mueller's flower in stock. That is what upsets the merchant the most. Alan hears this and realizes that Gerda came into the shop to buy the very herb that ended up saving Rawdon's life after he was attacked that night. If the merchant had simply refused to sell it, Alan figures that he might not have a father anymore. To show his appreciation, Alan gifts the merchant some albahiron jerky and thanks him sincerely for his kindness, after which he leaves the shop. On his way back, Alan is busy checking out some weapons in town when he runs into the same kid from the appraisal ceremony who had gained the axe talent, Dogora and the chieftain's son, Pelmoas. Alan knows that Dogora is nothing but trouble, so he tries to mind his own business house and leave quietly. However, Dogora smacks him on the head and immediately demands that Alan become his minion. In response, Alan pulls out his wooden sword and points it directly at Dogora. Dogora becomes flustered and complains that it is unfair because he does not have a weapon. Alan tells him that he is willing to fight fairly, so Dogora should go get any weapon of his choice while Alan waits right here. Dogora returns shortly after with a sword and charges at Alan, but Alan easily dodges and blocks all of his attacks. Dogora's strikes are strong, which makes sense since he is an axe user, but even so, his strength hardly compares to Krina's. Alan decides to end the duel quickly, knocks the sword out of Dogora's hand, and wins the fight. He simply acknowledges his victory and walks off nonchalantly, which makes Dogora even more furious. Later that night, Alan returns home, and Rodden is seen removing his bandages. This suggests that he is back in top shape and ready to continue hunting. Derja, however, warns him not to overdo it and risk pulling a muscle. The next day, at Krina's house, Dogora shows up again to challenge Alan to a rematch. He loses badly several times, but his ego refuses to let him accept defeat, so he keeps asking for more rematches. Meanwhile, Alan's younger brother, Mash, has already started sword training with Krina, which makes Alan excited to see how Mash will perform at the appraisal ceremony in 2 years. After some time, the new baby is born, and the family decides to name her Mila. Later, Rodden returns home from a hunt with Gerda, only to announce that the family is being summoned by the chieftain. Apparently, the chieftain wants them to increase the number of boars they deliver to the Baron from 10 to 15. To make that happen, the chieftain wants them to allow the commoners to join in on the hunt again this year. Derja thinks that this request is ridiculous, especially since Rodden suffered a terrible injury during the last hunt. Rodden admits that he wanted to decline, but it turns out that this was not a request. It was an order directly from the Baron. If they do not deliver 15 boars by winter this year, the Empire will recruit more serfs from elsewhere. Hearing this, Alan immediately understands that more serfs would mean less land to go around, which would put those who cannot hunt at risk of losing their land. Gerda adds that the worst part of it is that the Baron wants them to deliver 20 boars by the end of next year. Rodden figures that the only way to meet that demand is to hunt more often than the usual once every 10 days. Alan then speaks up and suggests that they simply follow the Baron's order. Gerda tells him not to interrupt when adults are speaking, but Rodden stops her and allows Alan to continue. Alan explains that they cannot refuse a direct order from the Baron, so even if the commoners end up being dead weight, they need to find a way to make that dead weight useful. Based on his past experience with games, Alan knows that making characters as useful as possible, even when they do not seem capable, is his specialty. He tells them to trust him and let him handle the situation. He reminds them that he was blessed with wisdom from Lord Elmia, and because of that blessing, he believes he has a plan that might actually work. The next day, Alan and Rodden meet up with the commoners who will be joining them on the hunt. When the commoners see Alan, they are surprised that a little kid like him is tagging along to hunt. Rodden explains that the plan is for everyone to adopt his hunting strategy, while Alan will simply tag along to watch and learn. Alan assures the others that he will not get in anyone's way, and then bows to thank them for allowing him to come along. Even though he feels a little upset about not being able to participate fully in the hunt, Alan reasons that the most important thing right now is to train the new hunters. He wants them to gain the experience necessary to help the group hunt more boars in the future, because he does not want anyone to get hurt like his father did during last year's hunt. One of the commoners approaches Rodden and apologizes for the injury he caused him last year. Rodden does not hold any ill feelings about it and tells him that it is no big deal. Instead, he tells everyone to focus on the goal ahead and not dwell on past mistakes. After that, the gate to the forest is opened, and they all begin to make their way inside, starting the hunt. As they enter the forest, Alan realizes that after 7 long years of being a serf, this is the first time he is leaving the village. In his mind, this is a small but significant step toward eventually freeing his family from the life of serfs. What excites him even more is the thought of seeing the White Dragon Mountains. According to legend, a mythical white dragon lives somewhere near those mountains, and Alan has always dreamed of catching a glimpse of it. Shortly after, the hunt is about to begin. Everyone assumes their positions as a giant boar charges into view. When the moment is right, the bait team positions themselves to lure the boar in a certain direction. Following them, the tank team moves in to hold the boar in place, preventing it from escaping or attacking anyone anyone dangerously. Finally, the strike team arrives to deliver the final blow. Alan carefully observes the entire process and realizes that this is the exact hunting technique that his father and other experienced hunters have been using for over 10 years to successfully capture and kill boars. He thinks to himself that it is a carefully planned and executed strategy, and it is actually very impressive to watch in action. Once the boar is finally slain, the commoners feel an immense sense of pride. They understand that successfully hunting the boar is equivalent to passing the trial of the gods, marking their achievement and skill. Alan estimates that because the boar is a C-rank monster, the commoners must have earned a considerable amount of experience points from this hunt. Curious, he pulls out his grimoire to see exactly how many points he received. Unfortunately, he finds that he did not gain any experience points at all. He thinks it over and realizes that this makes sense, since he did not participate in the fighting and had only observed the hunt from a safe distance. Nevertheless, Alan feels satisfied watching the commoners gain experience and grow more confident in their abilities. After that is finished, Alan starts making small talk with some of the villagers. They begin talking about the different kinds of meat they have gotten from monsters they hunted in the past. One of the men mentions that he would be more than happy to help carve up any monster meat Alan manages to get his hands on. Alan listens carefully and decides to accept the offer. He takes the man over to his stash of albahirones and asks him if he can help butcher them properly. Of course, the man does not plan to do the work for free. Alan offers him a deal instead. For every albahirone the man butchers, Alan will give him 2 packs of meat as payment. The man is surprised by how generous the offer is and immediately agrees to it without hesitation. Alan's main reason for doing this is simple. He is still working toward earning 50 gold so he can free his family from serfdom. If he had to hire a professional butcher, it would cost him even more money. By making this deal, he saves gold while still getting the meat prepared properly. Not long after that, the hunt begins again. This time, they decide to change their strategy. Instead of hunting as one large group, they split into smaller teams. By doing this, they are able to double the number of boars they hunt in a shorter amount of time. Even so, Alan still cannot understand why the Baron is so insistent on gathering more boars this year than ever before. Still, since the Baron is the one in charge, everyone has no choice but to follow his orders. Suddenly, one of the boars charges straight toward them. Gerda reacts immediately and leads the attack. He strikes the boar head-on and delivers a powerful, fatal blow. After that, he calls out to the new hunters and tells them to step in and finish it. When they do, they feel proud of themselves once again for completing the hunt successfully. Last time, Alan did not receive any increase in his stats, but this time is different. He checks his status carefully and is shocked with joy when he sees that his stats have increased and that he has even advanced to level 3. He realizes how he managed to do it. The method was simple, but very effective. He figured out that if one of the creatures he summons makes contact with a monster before it is killed, then he is counted as a participant in the battle. At the last possible moment, Alan summoned Denka and caused the boar to step on him, creating contact. This allowed Alan to gain experience, but it also resulted in Denka being killed. As Denka slowly floats up into the sky, Alan apologizes to him sincerely. Even so, he cannot help but admit to himself that the outcome was worth it. 3 months later, Alan and Krina are invited to the chieftain's house to celebrate the new year. After spending some time there, they return home to celebrate the holiday properly, surrounded by plenty of food. Gerda and his wife also come over to join them. Everyone eats together, laughs, and enjoys the warm atmosphere. While they are eating, Gerda asks Alan if the chieftain said anything about them. Alan replies that the chieftain was very thankful for all the hard work they have been doing and made sure to express his appreciation clearly. Rodden already expected this outcome because he knew they would not have any trouble reaching the quota of 20 boars that he suggested for the year. Alan then points out that the chieftain was so pleased with how well everything was going that he rewarded him with a bottle of liquor. Alan knows very well how much Rodden and Gerda love liquor and how wild they tend to get whenever alcohol is involved. Because of this, Alan decides to use the bottle to his advantage and comes up with an idea. Alan proposes a contest. He explains that if he wins, he will be allowed to properly join the hunt next time, wield a spear, and fight alongside them as an equal. However, if Rodden and Gerda win, they get to keep the liquor for themselves. The moment he explains the rules, they realize too late that they have already fallen into Alan's trap. Even so, their desire for the liquor is too strong strong, so they decide to accept the challenge anyway. They ask Alan what kind of competition he has in mind. Alan calmly replies that he wants it to be an arm wrestling contest. Both Rawdon and Gerda are shocked that Alan would even suggest something like that. To them, it seems obvious that they would be far stronger than a child like him. Still, because they really want the liquor, they agree to the contest without backing out. What they do not know is that Alan has been planning ahead. He has been saving several strength buff cards specifically for a moment like this. Because of that, he is confident that he can win, even against adults like Gerda and Rawdon. Gerda steps forward first to take on the challenge. He fully expects the match to be an easy win and does not take Alan very seriously at the start. However, as the contest begins, Gerda quickly realizes that Alan is much stronger than he expected. Alan holds his ground firmly, refusing to give in. Gerda puts up a strong fight and pushes back with all his might, but in the end, Alan manages to overpower him and win the match. After the contest, Alan thinks carefully and estimates that Gerda's strength stat must be somewhere between 150 and 200. Next, it is Rawdon's turn. Alan can tell right away that Rawdon is on a completely different level. While Alan's strength is somewhat close, Rawdon's power far surpasses his. No matter how hard Alan tries, Rawdon steadily pushes him down and wins the arm wrestling match. With the contest decided, Alan keeps his promise and hands over the bottle of liquor. Rawdon and Gerda happily accept it, and soon they are all drinking together and enjoying themselves. Although Alan did not get the result he wanted, the contest was not a waste. It helped him understand his own limits. He now knows that Gerda is roughly around D rank strength, while Rawdon is closer to C rank. Rawdon then tells Alan that he will not allow him to hunt boars until Alan can defeat him in strength. Rather than feeling discouraged, Alan accepts the challenge, determined to grow stronger and earn his place in the hunt. A little while later, Alan is pleased to notice that his summoner level has gone up once again. Curious, he immediately opens his grimoire to check what has changed. As he flips through the pages, he is amazed by the number of new skills that have appeared. One skill in particular completely catches his attention. He has gained the ability to freely view E-ranked cards whenever he wants. Alan instantly understands how valuable this ability is. With easier access to E-ranked cards, he is certain that his overall strength will rise quickly. In his mind, he is already confident that with this advantage alone, he should now be capable of challenging Rawdon again and possibly winning next time. However, as he continues examining the grimoire more closely, he notices something strange. There is a new page that was not there before. When he flips to it, he sees what looks like an empty cavity carved directly into the page itself. After experimenting a little, he realizes that this is a storage skill. He can store items inside the grimoire as long as they physically fit within the cavity. The storage space seems to stretch deeper than it looks, making it far more useful than it first appears. Alan is confused. Storage is a god-tier skill, something extremely rare and powerful. He cannot help but wonder why he would be given such an ability at this specific point in time. The timing feels deliberate, as if someone intended for him to receive it now. The next day, Alan decides to experiment with his new E-ranked summons. He takes out a magic stone and activates his summoning skill. The first creature he summons is an E-ranked insect, which turns out to be a brightly colored butterfly with shimmering wings. It is harmless but strangely magical in appearance. Next, Alan summons another E-ranked creature. This time, it is a saber-toothed tiger. The moment it appears, Alan instinctively takes a step back. The creature is intimidating, with sharp fangs and a powerful build. After watching it for a while, however, Alan realizes that it poses no threat to him. Slowly, he grows accustomed to its presence and decides to give it a name. He calls the tiger Tama and formally welcomes him as part of his growing team. Afterward, Alan attempts to fuse two of his summons. That is when he notices a major limitation. Each fusion requires a magic stone. With this realization, he understands that from now on, he will need a large supply of magic stones if he wants to continue growing stronger. The only way he knows how to obtain magic stones is by hunting horned rabbits. Later that night, he brings this up with his father. Unfortunately, Rawdon tells him that horned rabbits will not be appearing anytime soon. A ditch was dug around the village some time ago, preventing monsters from entering. This means Alan no longer has an easy way to gather magic stones. Disappointed, Alan spends the night thinking about alternatives. The following day, while Krina is once again training and kicking Dogora's butt, but Alan is busy speaking with Pelmoas and asks if he knows anything about magic magic stones. Pelmoas, who is knowledgeable about such matters, explains that D and C ranked magic stones are usually found in the royal capital and are considered valuable. On the other hand, E ranked magic stones are almost worthless and can sometimes be found lying around. To prove his point, Pelmoas casually picks one up from the ground and hands it to Alan before walking away. This single act fills Alan with renewed hope. He realizes that if E-ranked magic stones are that common, he can simply gather them himself. Over time, with help from the villagers, Alan manages to collect a large number of E-ranked magic stones. Using them, he successfully creates all of his E-ranked summons. As he finishes summoning them, a boar suddenly charges toward him. Without hesitation, his summons react instantly and kill it in one swift motion. Alan briefly celebrates, but then another boar appears. Once again, one of his summons steps in and protects him. At that moment, Alan suddenly opens his eyes. He realizes everything he just witnessed was a hallucination. Closing his eyes again, he reflects on the past 7 years. There was no guidebook for summoners, no teacher to instruct him. He has been forced to figure everything out on his own. Through this realization, Alan understands that each summon has a specific role. Insect types are used to apply debuffs. Beasts specialize in offense. Birds are meant for gathering intel. Grass types handle healing, and stone types are focused on defense. When combined, they allow him to fulfill every role of a standard party entirely by himself. That is what makes a summoner truly powerful. He now understands why he was given the storage skill. It exists so he can store the countless magic stones he will need. With an army of creatures at his command, Alan believes that a summoner may be stronger than even the demon lord himself. Sometime later, Alan, Rodden, and Gerda attend an early meeting with a chieftain. During the meeting, the chieftain informs them that the Baron has taken a strong interest in their recent success with the boar hunts. Because of this, he now wishes to come and witness the hunts in person. Gerda becomes visibly upset when she hears this news. This is the same Baron who demanded an unreasonable number of boars to be hunted in the first place. Now he wants to come and watch as if it is some kind of performance. Rodden, however, does not seem bothered by the idea of the Baron visiting. Instead, he is more confused about why Alan has been asked to attend the meeting as well. The chieftain explains that since the Baron is coming, he wants Alan to act as his guide. Alan will be responsible for showing him around the village, entertaining him, and explaining how the hunts are carried out. Gerda does not understand why Alan must be the one to handle this task. He asks why the chieftain cannot simply have his own son, Palomas, do it instead. In response, the chieftain explains that Palomas is not the most suitable person for such a responsibility. He has heard that it was Alan's clever ideas that led to the recent success in the boar hunts. Because of that, he believes Alan would be perfect for the role. He then directly asks Alan if he is willing to do it. Alan takes a moment to think. He realizes that he does not care about pleasing the Baron personally. What truly matters to him is freeing his family from serfdom. If he continues hunting boars the traditional way, it will take 10 years to earn enough to raise their status to that of commoners. However, he also remembers that social status can sometimes be granted directly by the Baron as a reward. With that possibility in mind, Alan agrees to serve as the Baron's guide. A few days later, Baron Granville arrives in the town with his daughter, Cecil. They are escorted by Zinoff and several knights. The chieftain welcomes them warmly. Soon after, everyone goes inside for dinner. After some light conversation, Baron Granville brings up the topic of the boar hunt. He apologizes to the chieftain for the sudden and heavy demand for boars. He explains that he understands the target is difficult to meet, but he had no choice because the order came directly from the king. The chieftain responds that he understands the situation and holds no resentment over it. As they begin eating, everyone comments on how delicious the food tastes. Cecil is especially impressed and asks what kind of meat is being served. Alan politely explains that it is Albahiron meat from a fresh one he hunted just the day before. He then takes the opportunity to introduce himself as the Baron's guide for the visit and says that it is a great honor to serve him. Baron Granville is impressed by Alan's manners and assumes he must be the chieftain Deboji's son. However, Deboji corrects him and explains that Alan is actually Rodden's son, one of the finest boar hunters in the village. Zinoff immediately recognizes the name Rodden and remembers Alan from their previous encounter. Baron Granville, however, is unfortunate unfamiliar with them. He asks whether Rodden was once a member of the knighthood. Deboji clarifies that Rodden and his family are actually serfs. Upon hearing this, Cecil becomes irritated. She questions why someone like Alan was allowed to even be in the same room as them. Baron Granvelle immediately corrects her. He tells her firmly that she must not speak about or to serfs as if they are animals. Realizing her mistake, she accepts the correction and immediately apologizes to her father. But even after being corrected, she continues to give Alan the stink eye. She says nothing more, but her expression makes her feelings obvious. Setting that aside, Zenoff turns his attention to Alan and says he hopes Alan is prepared to explain how the hunt will proceed the next day. Zenoff understands that hunting 20 boars is a very ambitious target. He adds that if the task proves too difficult for the serfs, the knights will step in and take over. Cecil then announces that she will also be joining the hunt. She says she wants to see what a boar looks like up close. Hearing Zenoff's earlier remark, Alan realizes that Zenoff still doubts the ability of the serfs. In response, Alan calmly states that 20 boars are not a large number for them. He assures everyone that they will have no trouble meeting their quota, and tomorrow's hunt will serve as clear proof of their skill. The following day, they all head into the forest where the hunt is set to take place. Alan, along with Baron Granvelle and his entourage, is seated on a raised platform built high above the ground. From there, they can safely observe the entire operation. Soon after, the hunters step forward and prepare to begin. One of them runs into the forest wearing light armor crafted from boar horns and pelts. This method is designed to lure the boars out of hiding. The scent and appearance provoke the animals, causing one to charge out of the trees. As soon as the boar emerges, the defense team moves quickly. They surround it with thick, reinforced shields, boxing it in and limiting its movement. The animal struggles, but it cannot break through the formation. Next, the strike team advances. They thrust their spears into the boar from multiple angles, weakening it with precise and controlled attacks. After several well-placed strikes, Rodden steps forward and delivers the final blow by driving a spear into the boar's neck. Baron Granvelle watches carefully and is visibly impressed. He admits that he did not expect such coordination and efficiency from them. However, the situation suddenly changes. 2 boars burst out of the forest at the same time. Seeing this, Zenoff assumes the hunters will be overwhelmed. He instructs Lebrand to have the knights ready to intervene. Before the order can be carried out, Alan calmly stops him. He explains that the hunters have specifically trained for situations like this. There is no need for concern. Just as Alan predicted, the hunters react without panic. They quickly divide into 2 groups and repeat the same strategy with discipline and precision. Each group surrounds a boar, restrains it, and strikes in coordinated fashion. Within moments, both animals are taken down successfully. Cecil watches the entire scene unfold. The blood and violence prove to be too much for her, so she just passes out from the shock. Shortly after that, the 2 boars were defeated. Granvelle stepped forward and looked over the scene. He counted quietly and realizes this means 3 boars have been defeated in total, so he says there are still 17 boars left to reach the quota of 20. Alan calmly corrected him. He explained that before Granvelle arrived, they had already taken down 7 boars. That meant only 10 were left. Granvelle was clearly impressed by this. He began to see that the villagers were far more capable than he first believed. In fact, he started to think that they might not even need the knights to finish the job. With the hunt moving forward, Alan told Granvelle that he had 2 requests. First, he asked for permission to build more shield walls to support the hunt. The walls had proven useful, and with more of them, they could protect the hunters and control the boars more safely. For his second request, Alan asked for the proper procurement and distribution of liquor within the serfs. Granvelle looked confused when he heard this. Liquor did not seem directly related to hunting. Alan explained his reasoning in simple terms. Because more and more boars were being hunted in their village, there was now an abundance of meat. If the villagers continued to trade only meat among themselves, the value of the meat would fall. There would be too much supply and not enough demand. This could lead to a market crash inside the village economy. However, if another product such as liquor were introduced into trade, it would create balance. It would give the villagers something else to exchange and help stabilize prices. In addition, liquor would help maintain the morale of the hunters after long and dangerous days. Zenoff considered the requests and found them reasonable. Granvelle also agreed that Alan's logic made sense. He said he would consider both requests favorably. He then commended Alan for his performance during the hunt. He stated that Alan showed leadership leadership and intelligence beyond his years. He could clearly see that Alan had great potential for the future. It was time for Granvelle and his group to leave. As Cecil mounted her horse, she looked at Alan and told him not to let the praise from her father go to his head. After saying that, she rode off alongside Sebas, the butler. Alan simply watched them leave. He was relieved that she had finally left and assumed that it was likely the last time he would see her. Later that day, Alan, Rawdon, and Gerda were summoned. They knelt before Granvelle as he addressed them formally. He praised them for their outstanding performance during the hunt. He stated that their coordination and discipline were worthy of recognition. Because of their success, he had decided to elevate their families from serf status to commoner status. When Alan heard this, he could hardly contain his joy. For 8 long years, he had dreamed of this moment. Becoming a commoner meant freedom. It meant opportunity. It meant that he would no longer be tied to the limitations of serf life. He would finally be allowed to travel beyond the village. In his mind, he had already decided where he would go first. He wanted to visit the White Dragon Mountains. His goal there would be dragon hunting. That dream had lived inside him for years. Granvelle then explained another matter. The king intended to use their village as an example for the rest of the kingdom. Because of this, he requested a full explanation of how the boar hunts began in the first place. Rawdon's expression turned sour at the mention of this topic. Gerda gently explained that it was a painful memory for Rawdon. He asked if he could speak in Rawdon's place. Granvelle agreed without objection. Gerda began to explain the history. 13 years ago, around 100 serfs from nearby villages came to their land. This was part of the reclamation decree, which ordered the development of unused land. The group worked hard for 6 months. They cleared forests, prepared the soil, and planted crops. Slowly, their efforts began to show results. The fields were growing well, and the future seemed promising. Then disaster struck. A massive boar appeared without warning. It charged through the fields and destroyed the crops they had spent months growing. The entire harvest was ruined. The loss was devastating. The villagers fell into deep despair. It was during this time of hopelessness that Rawdon proposed a bold idea. Instead of living in fear of the boars, they should hunt them. At that time, they lacked proper weapons and advanced tools. Even so, they gathered what they could and prepared themselves. Through teamwork and determination, they managed to kill their first boar. After hearing the full story, Granvelle wondered why Rawdon had been so reluctant to share it. From his point of view, it was a story of courage and determination. It was something Rawdon should have been proud of. Gerda calmly explained that during that very first boar hunt, one of their comrades died. The memory of that loss still weighed heavily on Rawdon. Gerda said he had told Rawdon many times not to blame himself, but Rawdon refused to let go of the guilt. Granvelle understood and apologized for bringing up such a painful memory. To make up for it, he decided to offer Rawdon a reward. He told him to make a wish, and whatever it was, he would grant it. When Alan heard this, he felt excited. To him, this sounded like a bonus opportunity. He assumed Rawdon would ask for something simple, such as liquor for the village. Instead, Rawdon made a different request. He asked Granvelle to allow Alan to work at his estate. The moment Alan heard this, his heart sank. This was not what he wanted. If he spent his days running errands at the estate, he would never get the chance to chase his dream of seeing the outside world. Becoming tied down to estate work would only slow him down. Before Alan could react, Granvelle told Rawdon that Alan was too capable to simply work as a laborer at the estate. Instead, he proposed that Alan become a manservant to the Granvelle family. This position would mean serving the family directly and living within their residence. Rawdon was stunned. Being offered such a role was a great honor. It meant trust and recognition. Alan would not just work at the estate, he would be part of the household. Cecil, however, did not look pleased when she heard this. She clearly did not welcome the idea. Alan's mind raced as he tried to think of a way to refuse. He did not want to give up his freedom, but when he looked at his father's face and saw how proud and happy he was, he hesitated. This meant a better future for their family. In the end, Alan decided to accept it. The next day, preparations were made for Alan to leave for the Baron's estate. The village gathered to see him off. Many were sad, especially his brother Mash. Mash cried openly and said he would miss him. His sister Mula was still too young to fully understand what was happening, so she remained quiet and calm. Krina was also saddened by his departure. To say goodbye in their own way, they decided to have one final duel, just like they used to. The villagers formed a circle and watched carefully. As the duel went on, people began to notice something unusual. Alan was slowly gaining the upper hand. Normally, Krina was the stronger fighter and almost always won. The reason for this change was something Alan had kept to himself. He had used 20 magic stones to craft a hawk. This magical creation had greatly increased his agility. He was now faster and more precise than before. That boost allowed him to match and even surpass Krina during the duel. In the end, Alan won. However, he did not claim full victory. He called it a draw and said they would settle it properly the next time they met. Krina smiled at that and seemed comforted by his words. After the duel, Dogora approached Alan. Without saying much, he handed him a dagger as a farewell gift. Dogora clearly did not want to show his emotions. He avoided eye contact and walked away quickly after giving it to him. Finally, it was time to leave. The entire village gathered as Alan walked beside his parents toward the exit. His parents reminded him that he was hardworking and capable, but they told him not to push himself too hard. They advised him to ask for help when needed and to take care of himself. When they reached the village gates, his parents gave him a brief goodbye. There were no long speeches. The meaning was clear in their expressions. Alan stepped into the Baron's carriage. As it began to move away from the village, he looked back one last time. The familiar homes, the fields, and the people who had shaped his life slowly grew distant. A single tear rolled down his face, not from sadness alone, but from relief and determination. He understood that leaving the village was not the end. It was another step forward. A couple of days later, Alan commences his duties as a manservant and arrives at the Granvelle estate, and he is immediately surprised at just how large and beautiful the estate is. He's never been in an environment this nice before, so it all takes him by surprise. However, his amazement is quickly interrupted as Cecil immediately starts taking advantage of him, climbing onto his shoulders and using him like a stool to pluck fruit from a high branch. Alan is extremely frustrated by this and is on the verge of throwing her off, but he decides to endure it because his entire family is depending on him to keep this job, and he can't afford to make a mistake. After she finally gets down, she bites into the fruit and immediately shows her displeasure because it is really sour. Just at that moment, an airship flies past overhead, and it's the first time Alan has ever seen one. He is completely amazed, as he has only ever read about airships before, so seeing one in real life makes him extremely excited and happy. Despite having only just arrived at the estate, he begins to think that being a manservant isn't as bad as he had originally feared. The next day, Alan wakes up full of energy, ready to start the day and perform his duties properly. He heads downstairs to the maid headquarters, where he is introduced to the head servant, a calm and chill guy named Rickley. After Alan approaches him, Rickley asks how he has been getting along with Cecil, and from Alan's expression, Rickley can immediately tell that it has been pretty rough. Rickley sympathizes with Alan and explains that things wouldn't be so difficult if he were serving as a hall boy instead of a manservant. Alan, still confused about the difference, decides to ask for clarification. Rickley patiently explains that there are different ranks of servants in the estate, primarily divided into senior rank and junior rank. Although manservants are part of the junior rank, they are still considered members of the family and are included in household matters, treated with respect and dignity. Hall boys, on the other hand, are also junior rank but are not considered part of the family. They are merely occasional helpers who assist when needed and have no familial status. Alan is surprised to learn that some servants are considered part of the royal family and included in their activities. After hearing this, he finally understands why his father had been moved to tears of joy. Granvelle was kind enough not just to hire him, but to make him a member of the family, giving him a status and respect that is truly special and meaningful. Shortly after that, Alan serves breakfast to the royal family, carefully arranging each dish and making sure everything is to their liking. The First Lady is immediately impressed with how quickly Alan has picked up on his servant duties. She had never expected a former serf like him to display such impeccable manners, attentiveness, and precision. Granvelle, noticing Alan's diligence, brings up the fact that Alan doesn't possess a talent, and that catches Cecil's attention immediately. She seizes the opportunity to flex on him, proudly declaring that she has the wizardess talent, while her brother Mihai is a swordsman. Granvelle, however, quickly yells at her, reminding her never to brag about talents, prompting Cecil to sheepishly correct herself. Shortly after, one of Granvelle's daughters, Thomas, begins to cry because she too lacks a talent like Alan. Granvelle comforts her gently, assuring her that she will still have the opportunity to attend the Nobles' College in the royal capital. He shares that he himself was born without a talent, which is why he attended the Nobles' College, and that it was there he met her mother and began his family. Hearing this, Thomas tries her best to cheer up, bolstered bolstered by her father's example and reassurance. With that settled, Alan enjoys having the afternoon off and decides to head into the town to explore. He is immediately fascinated by how much larger and more advanced the town is compared to his village. As he looks around, his eyes catch the Adventurer Guild, and he hurries inside to see if he can register as an adventurer. When he speaks to the receptionist and tells her he is only 8 years old, she shakes her head and informs him that the minimum age to register is 12. Undeterred, Alan decides that this won't stop him from pursuing his monster hunting dreams. He heads over to the notice board to gather information about monsters in the area, studying the postings carefully and noting which creatures appear frequently, including mentions of the legendary white dragon. As Alan examines the board, an adventurer named Raven approaches him and harshly tells him to leave, insisting that this is no place for a child to linger. Alan almost complies, but he quickly realizes that this encounter is an opportunity to gain information from a real adventurer. Using a few clever mind games and questions, he manages to extract detailed knowledge about the monsters listed on the notice board, including their strengths, habits, and weaknesses. Just as he finishes, Raven's comrades arrive, signaling that it's time for Alan to leave. He departs, satisfied that he now has all the information he needs to begin tackling his next goal. The next morning, Alan heads for the town gates to venture outside, only to be stopped by one of the guards. He quickly presents his servant pass, and the guard, recognizing its authority, steps aside and opens the gate for him. After reaching a certain point, Alan notices with some disappointment that he hasn't run into any monsters along the way, so he decides he'll need to search for them instead. Thinking quickly, he summons 5 hawks and sends them out to scout the nearby area for any signs of monsters. After a short while, one of the hawks returns, indicating that it has located some creatures. Following the hawk's lead, Alan discovers a small group of goblins nearby. Without wasting any time, he summons 5 saber-toothed tigers, which charge forward and annihilate the goblins with ease. Alan even manages to deal the final blow to one goblin by hurling a rock, which makes him laugh in triumph. Defeating all the goblins earns him 1000 XP, and he is elated at the progress he's making. He collects the magic stones dropped by the goblins and stores them carefully, then commands the hawks to continue scouting for more targets. The hawks soon locate another group of goblins, and Alan uses his remaining summons to wipe them out efficiently. One by one, they fall, and by the end of the day, Alan has earned over 16,000 XP. He jumps in joy, declaring this the best day off ever because he leveled up twice. On top of the experience gained, he also acquires valuable buffs for his summons and collects more useful information about magic stones and the behavior of D-rank monsters. Despite it being night, Alan still feels energetic and instructs the hawks to find the next target. However, the hawks refuse because it's too dark to see. Realizing that he had been relying on the hawks to guide him back, Alan suddenly understands that he's lost in the woods with no clear way out. After some struggle, he eventually manages to navigate his way back home. About a month later, he stops by one of the blacksmith's store in town to purchase iron balls for hunting, paying a total of 60 silver coins. He feels a sense of pride, knowing he has already reached level 12 in such a short span of time. After spending a day wandering through town, Alan finally returns home to find Sebas waiting for him. Sebas informs him that Granvelle wishes to speak with him. Alan goes to Granvelle's office, where Granvelle commends him for his impeccable service as a servant. However, Granvelle also voices concern about Alan's activities on his days off, noting that he always leaves early in the morning and returns very late at night. Alan understands why they would be concerned and decides to be completely honest. He explains that he has been using his free time to hunt monsters, as hunting runs in his blood. Being the son of a boar hunter, Granvelle is genuinely impressed, especially since he had assumed Alan had simply been goofing off during his time off. To formalize this, they decide that all the meat Alan hunts will be bought for 1 silver per piece. Alan is thrilled to hear this, realizing that he can now pursue his hunting passion while earning money at the same time. 6 months later, Alan is back in the forest as usual, preparing to hunt more goblins. Suddenly, his hawks swoop over to him, behaving unusually and acting more agitated than usual. Sensing something is wrong, Alan immediately runs in the direction the hawks are leading him and discovers Raven and his party under attack by a group of goblins. Raven has already sustained fatal injuries, leaving his comrades, Rita and Milsai, to fend off the attackers. Alan carefully observes the situation and realizes that he can't summon his creatures in front of them without causing chaos, so this time he decides to fight personally. He and Rita coordinate their attacks, using their weapons to take down the remaining goblins. The fight is effortless for Alan, as he has leveled up significantly. His strength and agility are now over 300, allowing him to handle D-rank monsters with ease. Even after the monsters are defeated, Raven's injuries are severe, and Alan sees that immediate action is necessary. He pulls out a healing flower and applies it to Raven, instantly patching up his wounds and restoring him to full health. Raven recognizes Alan as the same boy he had seen at the Adventurer Guild recently and expresses his heartfelt gratitude for saving him. Just as Alan prepares to leave, Raven's party calls him back, insisting that he let them repay his help in some way. Alan doesn't desire anything extravagant, so he requests that they gather 100 E-rank magic stones for him, to which they readily agree, promising to have them ready by the following week. After parting ways, Alan returns to confront Hawkins about why he had flown beyond the 3-kilometer limit he had explicitly set. Observing Hawkins' expression, Alan realizes that the hawk had gone further out of compassion, wanting to help the adventurers in danger. He had always assumed his summons merely followed orders, but now he understands that they possess feelings and discretion. Acknowledging this, Alan pats Hawkins on the head and apologizes for his earlier tone, assuring him he didn't intend to scold him harshly. Hawkins accepts the apology, and Alan's bond with his summons feels strengthened. With that matter settled, Alan resumes his duties as a manservant, once again enduring Lady Cecil using him as a makeshift stool to get some jam off the top shelf. Alan does this, maintaining his balance between service and adventure with the same dedication as always. Some time later, Christmas arrives, and the noble family gathers together for dinner. As they begin eating, they immediately notice how delicious the meat tastes. The flavor is rich and tender. It is revealed that the meat comes from a horned rabbit that Alan hunted himself. Zenoff praises Alan, saying he expected nothing less from the son of Rodden. During the meal, Zenoff also announces that the village has successfully met its hunting quota of 20 boars. Alan feels pleased hearing this news. However, he is not surprised. He never once doubted his father's ability to achieve the goal. Thomas, however, complains. He points out that despite so many boars being hunted, none of the meat has been served to them. Granvelle immediately scolds him, telling him not to be selfish and to be grateful for what they already have. Alan overhears this exchange. He finds it both harsh and slightly ironic. In truth, the serfs working the land often eat more meat than the son of a noble family. Still craving something more impressive, Thomas turns to Alan and asks him to hunt a white deer for him. Without hesitation, Alan agrees. Alan recalls that white deer are C-rank monsters, roughly equal in strength to boars. He understands that defeating one will not be simple. However, he enjoys challenges, and this only motivates him further. With that in mind, Alan heads into the snowy forest. He begins by digging a deep ditch in the snow, carefully preparing a trap. Before long, Hawkins flies down and informs him that he has located a white deer nearby. Alan quickly puts his plan into motion. He summons his hopper squad of frogs and positions them in front of the deer to draw its attention. The white deer notices the frogs and charges toward them, attempting to crush them. Just before impact, Alan makes the frogs disappear. Moments later, he summons them again in front of the deer. The deer charges once more, and again the frogs vanish at the last second. After repeating this several times, the white deer becomes furious. Enraged, it continues chasing the frogs without thinking. The chase leads it directly toward the hidden ditch Alan prepared earlier. Unable to stop in time, the white deer falls straight into the trap. Alan allows himself a small moment of celebration. His plan worked perfectly. He then approaches the trapped deer, pulls out his knife, and carefully carves it up. Later that day, at the Granvelle mansion, the guards suddenly rush to the front gate. They spot what appears to be a white deer approaching and prepare to attack. But then Alan steps out from beneath the carcass he is carrying and quickly tells them to stand down. The white deer is not a threat. It is a gift for Thomas. The Granvelle family comes outside to see the commotion. Thomas is overjoyed. Alan kept his promise and successfully hunted a white deer for him. Granvelle is visibly surprised. Capturing such a powerful C-rank monster is no small feat. Turning to Sebas, Granvelle quietly says they need to properly investigate whether Alan truly possesses exceptional talent. Later, Sebas calls Alan to his office and informs him that the Granvelle house has decided to promote him. Alan will no longer work only as a manservant. Instead, he will also take on the role of a huntsman. As a huntsman, huntsman. Alan's main responsibility will be hunting animals to provide high-quality meat for the royal household. In addition, if he encounters monster attacks while traveling or hunting, he is expected to help protect nearby bystanders. Sebas also explains that the previous pay-as-you-go system has been abandoned. Instead, Alan will receive a fixed salary of 100 silver coins. Alan agrees without hesitation. He immediately realizes this is an excellent arrangement. All he needs to do is hunt monsters as quickly as possible, return to his other duties, and then continue farming goblins for practice and resources. Feeling satisfied with the deal, Alan accepts the position of huntsman and declares that he will start work the next day. Sebas quickly raises his hand to stop him. He explains that Alan will not be required to work every single day. Alan will continue serving as Cecil's manservant and will still work as a waiter in the mansion. His huntsman duties will only be assigned once every few days, or roughly about once a week depending on necessity. Alan understands and accepts the arrangement. By March of the following year, Cecil becomes extremely excited. Her elder brother Mihai is finally returning home from the academy. Mihai arrives in dramatic fashion aboard a massive airship that slowly descends toward the port. The arrival of the airship attracts the attention of the household staff and nearby residents. When the airship lands, Mihai steps out with confidence. Seeing him, Cecil immediately runs forward and greets him with warmth and happiness. Alan watches from a short distance and is slightly surprised by how well the siblings get along. He remembers that Mihai entered the academy when he was younger, so he should be about 14 years old now. However, Mihai looks noticeably more mature and physically developed than Alan expected. Alan walks up to Mihai and politely offers to carry his luggage. While doing so, he introduces himself as a new manservant working in the mansion and also mentions his position as a huntsman. Mihai is genuinely surprised that a boy of Alan's age is already capable of handling such roles. He concludes that Alan must be exceptionally gifted to be trusted with such responsibilities. Before Alan has the chance to say anything further, Mihai presents a small souvenir he brought from the capital for Cecil. Cecil eagerly pulls Mihai away and begins talking about all the fun activities they will do together now that he is back. Watching the two siblings interact, Alan feels a quiet sense of nostalgia. The scene reminds him of his own home. He starts wondering whether his family is doing well and hopes that they are living peacefully. Later, while Alan is out hunting, he manages to catch a huge rooster and brings it back to the mansion. The chef is impressed with the size and quality of Alan's catch. He remarks that this is another excellent haul and suggests that they can use it to prepare something special for Mihai's welcome back dinner. Rickle then informs Alan that Zenoff and Mihai are currently having a duel. Hearing this, everyone moves to watch the fight. Alan observes the battle closely because this is the first time he has ever seen Zenoff fight using a sword. The duel continues for some time. Alan is surprised to see that Mihai is able to hold his ground against Zenoff. However, after a while, both fighters decide that the duel has gone on long enough and stop. After the duel ends, Mihai notices the large hunting haul Alan brought back. Seeing Alan's strength and endurance, he suggests that they should spar with each other. Zenoff calls Alan over and hands him a sword. Alan is immediately impressed when he realizes he's holding a blade made of mithril. He recalls that his attack stats have increased by 7 levels from all the hunting he has been doing recently. Because of this, he feels confident that he might be able to win the sparring match. Not long after, the duel begins. Unexpectedly, Mihai is much stronger and faster than Alan anticipated. Mihai takes the offensive from the very beginning and controls the pace of the fight throughout the match. Despite Alan's efforts, he is defeated. Alan accepts his loss and admits that Mihai is on a completely different level. He realizes he never really stood a chance in the fight. Cecil and Thomas quickly run over to Mihai and congratulate him. They tell him that he has become much stronger than when he was last at the mansion. Mihai explains that his strength improved because he cleared a dungeon during the summer. He also mentions that he received swordsmanship training from Diverg, the famous sword master. Listening to this, Alan quietly reflects that this must be what living life on easy mode feels like. Before leaving, Mihai mentions that he will not be returning until next summer. Hearing this, Alan asks him to promise that they will spar again when he comes back. Mihai agrees, but he also tells Alan to look after Cecil until he returns. Alan is slowly growing frustrated with his situation as Cecil's servant. His main goal is to help his family escape poverty as quickly as possible. If he had the freedom to choose, he would prefer to hunt monsters every single single day. He begins thinking about how he can leave his current position without bringing shame to his father or damaging his family's reputation. A few days later, Mihai returns to his academy. Cecil feels especially sad watching him leave. A month later, Viscount Carnal visits Baron Granvel's residence. Alan serves both of them while remembering what Rickle told him earlier. Carnal holds the title of Viscount and governs the neighboring fiefdom, placing him one rank above Granvel in terms of social standing. Rickle does not know the exact reason for Carnal's visit, but he quietly warns Alan to remain cautious. The Granvel and Carnal families have been in conflict for centuries, and tensions between their territories have never fully settled. Carnal governs the White Dragon Mountains. Rickley gives Alan a brief explanation of the situation there. The White Dragon Mountains are rich in mithril deposits, a rare and valuable metal. However, extraction has been impossible because a powerful dragon inhabits the region. Its presence makes mining operations far too dangerous. As a result, the Granvel fiefdom has suffered a significant economic downturn. Hearing this, Alan realizes that the issue is far more complex than a simple territorial dispute. Setting that aside, Baron Granvel gets straight to the point. He asks Carnal why he truly came, stating that there is no reason he would travel such a distance merely to enjoy a meal. Carnal confirms this. He explains that his youngest daughter recently completed her appraisal ceremony and he has come to announce the results. After hearing this, Alan begins to hope that Mash possesses a talent, especially since he showed such skill with the spear. With a satisfied expression, Carnal reveals that she is talentless. He then reminds Granvel that 2 of his 3 children possess talents. He adds that it must be unfortunate to be in Granvel's position. Granvel responds with restrained resentment and visible jealousy. Alan is confused. He had always believed that having a talent was something to celebrate. During the appraisal ceremony, he saw commoners rejoice when they received a talent and feel devastated when they did not. He begins to wonder why the situation appears reversed among nobles. Perhaps talents come with certain political or social complications for aristocratic families. After delivering his message, Carnal departs in his carriage. A few months later, October arrives and Alan is already 9 years old. On his day off, he visits the Adventurers Guild and meets up with Raven and his party. He tells them that he wants to start taking on C-rank monsters. They react with shock. C-rank monsters are considered dangerous even for many adult adventurers. However, they acknowledge Alan's skill and suggest that he at least acquire proper armor first. They take him to an armor shop and show him a variety of equipment. The piece that stands out most to Alan is a red armor set. He chooses it and heads out immediately to begin hunting. Hawkins scouts ahead and locates a sleeping C-rank orc. Alan releases his Tama squad, and together they defeat it without much difficulty. After carving the boar, he gets a C-rank magic stone and feels proud of accomplishing this largely on his own. Still, he reminds himself to remain humble. His defeat against Mihai proved that he still has significant room for growth. Shortly afterward, Hawkins signals that he has located another C-rank monster. Alan rushes over and discovers that it is a C-rank armored ant. He immediately deploys his saber-toothed tigers, but their attacks have no effect against its hardened shell. Quickly adapting, Alan releases his butterflies, causing the creature to fall asleep. As it collapses, he pulls out his dagger and attempts to finish it off, but its shell proves far too durable. Suddenly, the armored ant awakens, and Alan frantically stabs at it again and again, until he finally manages to bring it down. His grimoire displays the usual reward statistics. Everything appears normal at first. However, he notices something unusual. His intelligence stat is extremely high. He begins to wonder if this means he might be capable of casting spells. Curious, he asks Cecil to summon a professor to test his magical aptitude once he returns to the mansion. Cecil doubts it will amount to anything, as Alan has never shown magical aptitude before. The professor places a crystal ball in Alan's hands and instructs him to focus. After several attempts, the crystal ball shows no reaction. The conclusion is clear: Alan cannot use magic nor cast spells. Even so, he remains puzzled. If he lacks magical ability, why is his intelligence stat so high? The next day, the Granvel family is sitting together eating lunch when Rickle rushes into the room with urgent news. He tells them that a murdergalsh is heading toward the town and will arrive in about 2 hours. Granvel is shocked to hear this. He immediately tells Sebas to call on Xenoff to handle the threat, but Sebas delivers bad news. Xenoff is away on a mission and will not return for another 2 days. Granvel does not waste time feeling sorry about it. He tells Sebas to gather gather the adventurers in town instead and to begin moving the citizens outside the gate to safety. Then Alan speaks up. He tells the group that he will go and help hold off the Murdergausch. Before he can say another word, Cecil cuts in and tells him to forget about it. He is her manservant, and she will not have him throwing himself into danger. It is easy to see that she has grown to care about him, even if she would never say so out loud. Alan listens to her, then calmly reminds her that he is no longer only her manservant. He is also the official huntsman of the Granville family, and that role comes with a duty to protect. Alan heads straight toward the danger, while the people of the town run in the other direction. He knows exactly what a Murdergausch is. It is a B-rank monster, which means none of the adventurers currently in town stand a real chance against it. If he does not stop it, no one will. There is one serious problem. Alan used up all of his mana points during his expedition earlier that morning. He has nothing left to work with and will have to wait for his MP to refill before he can use his abilities. When Alan reaches the gates, he spots a merchant standing next to a guard, pleading desperately for help. The man explains that his family is stuck inside a carriage that the Murdergausch is closing in on. Alan looks over and sees the monster tearing into one of the horses nearby. The man's family is still right there, completely exposed and seconds away from being attacked. Alan does not hesitate. He steps forward and summons a metal ball, then hurls it with enough force to destroy one of the monster's eyes. That gets its attention. Alan then takes off running into the forest, pulling the Murdergausch away from the town and the people still in danger. The monster takes the bait and goes after him. With no MP left, Alan has no special moves to fall back on. For now, all he can do is keep running. The Murdergausch suddenly lunges at him, but Alan jumps out of the way just in time. As he catches his breath, he notices something unsettling. The monster is wearing a strange smile, almost like it is toying with him and enjoying every second of it. Right at that moment, his MP finishes refilling. Alan wastes no time. He begins summoning his creatures, creating 36 copies of Papillons, and orders a few of them to put the Murdergausch to sleep. But the sleep effect does absolutely nothing to the monster, so he summons additional butterflies. Yet the monster remains completely unaffected. Alan is stunned. He has no other option right now, so he keeps running deeper into the forest for hours. Even so, he manages to find something to feel good about. He has successfully pulled the Murdergausch far away from the town, and the people there are safe. That counts for something. The monster continues to chase him through the trees until Alan finally manages to shake it off. He finds a spot to rest and lies low, staying completely still so the Murdergausch cannot find him. He thinks through the situation. He has dragged the monster far enough away from town, and he cannot figure out a way to actually defeat it right now. The smartest move is to head back. Alan reaches into his storage and pulls out a red cloak, getting himself ready for the journey home. But the Murdergausch hears him. The small sounds he makes while getting ready are enough to give away his position, and just like that, the chase starts all over again. Alan runs as fast as his legs will carry him with the monster right behind him. 3 days later, Alan drags himself toward the town gates, limping and barely holding together. One of the guards spots him, who rushes over and reaches him just before his legs give out completely. Sometime later, Alan wakes up inside the Granville house. Cecil and Sebas are both standing over him. Cecil immediately scolds him, telling him just how much he made her worry. Alan apologizes to her. Sebas then asks him if he remembers how he made it back. Alan says he does. He tells them how the Murdergausch chased him through the forest for 3 full days before he finally made it home. Sebas informs Alan that Granville will need a full report of everything that happened. Alan agrees without hesitation. A few hours later, Alan stands before Granville and walks him through every detail of what took place. Zinov is also in the room listening. Even though Alan never managed to fully defeat the Murdergausch, Zinov is clearly impressed. Holding off a B-rank monster for 3 days with no backup is no small thing. In recognition of what he did, Granville awards Alan 10 gold coins. On top of that, the family from the carriage that Alan rescued sends another 10 gold coins as thanks. Alan stares at the coins and feels a rush of excitement. With this much money, he realizes he will finally be able to buy himself a new mithril sword. Alan heads out the next day to resume his monster hunting. He brings his brand new mithril sword along and wastes no time putting it to the test. The very first monster he comes across goes down faster than anything he has managed before. He collects the magic stone from it and then decides to run a little experiment that has been on his mind. He calls down 2 of the hawks he has summoned while instructing instructing a third to stay up in the air and fly away from the area. He places one of the 2 grounded hawks back into its card and sets 3 items on the floor in front of him. He puts one of those items into a bag and shows the hawk still standing on the ground which item he placed inside. Then he resummons the hawk he returned to its card earlier, the one that never saw which item went into the bag. He asks it the same question. It answers correctly. Next, he calls back the hawk he sent flying away and asks it the same question. This one has no idea. Then Alan summons a completely fresh hawk and asks the same question. This one also gets it right. Finally, he summons a bird from a different species entirely and asks the same question. That one has no clue. Alan turns everything he just observed over in his head and reaches a clear conclusion. Summons of the same species are able to share knowledge with each other. Brand new copies of the same summon are born already carrying that shared knowledge, but summons from completely different species have no access to it at all. The full weight of what this means hits him hard. When one of his summons dies, everything it learned and experienced gets passed on to the next one. His summons are far more powerful than he ever gave them credit for. A few months later, Mihai has come back for a visit. The 2 of them are seen sparring together, trading blows back and forth. Despite everything Alan has put in over the past several months, farming C-rank monsters and grinding his way all the way up to level 28, Mihai is still beating him in a sword duel without breaking much of a sweat. Alan is furious. He cannot figure out what it is going to take to finally come out on top against him. Later that evening, the Granville family is gathered together at the dinner table when one of the guards bursts into the room with urgent news. He announces to everyone present that the white dragon has migrated. The entire room goes still. Even Granville looks shaken. He asks the guard where it is heading. The guard replies that an eyewitness saw the dragon leaving its nest and flying in the direction of the carnal fiefdom. Granville takes a moment to process this and then decides it is actually good news. The white dragon living in their fiefdom is the very reason they have been unable to mine mithril for close to 100 years. Now that it has left, they will finally be free to start mining again for the first time in a century. Zinov is quick to bring everyone back to reality though. He points out that they cannot simply walk into the forest and start digging. The area is still packed with dangerous orcs and all kinds of other monsters. Before any mining can begin, the forest and the surrounding mines will need to be completely cleared out first. Mihai asks Zenov if he can help clear out the monster on the way to the mines. Zenov refuses, explaining that the white dragon could return at any moment and the mountains will also be filled with high-ranking monsters. Alan hears all of this and feels a knot forming in his stomach. If the forest gets cleared, he loses his entire hunting ground. All of the monsters he has been relying on to level up and grow stronger will be gone. Alan knows he needs to come up with a new plan and that the clock is ticking. A couple of days later on his day off, he heads far out from the town. His MP is completely full and he has picked up a good number of new skills recently, so he decides today is the perfect day to sit down and really dig into what he is working with. He is genuinely excited about it. The skill that catches his attention the most is the share skill. He summons Hawkins and tries it out straight away. The moment it activates, he can see through both his own eyes and Hawkins' eyes at the same time. He discovers it goes even further than that. He is also able to share the special abilities of his summons directly. Alan immediately recognizes how powerful this is. He tries using 4 Hawkins at once and it works. He gets a little carried away and tries to connect with as many summons as he can all at once. The result is a sharp and painful migraine that forces him to stop. That was too much to take on at the same time. Once the pain fades, he works out that 5 summons seems to be the limit of what he can handle. Something about that does not sit right with him though. He can summon up to 50 creatures at once, so why can he only share with 5? He opens his grimoire and looks closer at his stats. His intelligence stat is sitting at 111, and that is the number that controls how far the share skill can reach. He summons 6 of the bird creatures, which are known specifically for their high intelligence. Just as he expected, his intelligence stat climbs to 1,250, and he is now able to use the share skill across 6 summons at the same time. Alan finally understands what the developers had in mind when they built a summoner class around such a high intelligence stat. It was always meant to work this way. Alan has also recently unlocked the ability to summon D-rank monsters. He calls a few of them forward and tests the share skill on them as well. It works perfectly. That realization leads him to another one. There is really no reason for him to go out out and hunt in person anymore. He can direct his summons from a safe distance and let them do all the work for him. He puts the idea into action immediately, sitting back and guiding his summons remotely as they move through the area and take down nearby monsters one by one. It works exactly as he hoped. Next, Alan turns his attention to his new summon Tatarot and its ability to restore MP. Tatarot uses its skill and transforms into a small piece of fruit. Alan picks it up and holds it in his hand. It dissolves into his body and his MP refills completely in an instant. This is a huge deal. Alan puts it all together in his head, with his summons able to hunt on their own and Tatarot able to keep his MP topped up. He can effectively farm monsters every single day of the month without ever needing to leave the house. The thought genuinely delights him. Before he sends them off though, he makes one thing absolutely clear to all of his summons. They are to avoid human adventurers at all times. Even if one of them is attacked first, they are not to fight back under any circumstances. On his way home, one more idea comes to him. He takes control of one of his flying summons and steers it back toward the house to check in on everyone. Through its eyes, he sees Krina and Dagora in the middle of a sparring session. Later on, he spots his father working in the field. Afterward, Alan sees his mother and Mula inside the house. Everyone looks to be doing just fine, satisfied that they are all well. He guides the summon away. Before it leaves, he drops a single gold coin for them. He makes a quiet promise to himself that he will bring more every month from now on. Some time passes after that, and the Granvelle family sits down together for breakfast. Granvelle takes a moment to commend Xenoff for the work he has been putting in recently, then turns the conversation to the mines and asks where things stand. Xenoff says that the mines sat untouched for so long that monsters moved in and made them their home, and it does not stop there. The mines connected to the nearby villages that served as mithril refineries have also been overrun by orcs and goblins. His best estimate is that getting even the closest mine operational again will take around 3 years. Granvelle knows it will not be simple. Even so, he makes it clear to Xenoff that he wants it done as quickly as possible. Alan sits at the table and quietly takes note of something. Granvelle seems unusually impatient about this, which is not like him at all. Granvelle then shifts his attention and asks what Viscount Carnal has been doing throughout all of this. Xenoff tells him that the Viscount apparently tried to push ahead with mining operations even while the White Dragon was still there. Word has it that every miner he sent in was met with the dragon's fury and burned to ash. Granvelle takes that in and tells Xenoff that they need to move carefully from here. With the Viscount's mines completely shut down, there is no telling what the man might do next. Alan processes all of this and feels the reality of the situation settle on him. The knights are genuinely going to move through the area and wipe out the monsters. He does some quiet thinking of his own. He has 2 years left before he turns 12, at which point he plans to leave the Granvelle family and begin his life as an adventurer. Until then, he intends to spend that time doing something useful and clearing out as many monsters as he can in return for everything the family has given him. Just then, his grimoire lights up. It notifies him that one of his summons just took down an orc, earning him 15,000 experience points. He has made the most of the past 6 months, and this is the result of it. On his next day off, Alan is deep in the forest, directing his summons and making full use of their individual abilities to tear through a large group of goblins in very little time. Alan has made up his mind about these goblins. As long as they are out here, they will keep hurting people, so he is going to wipe them out completely. He sends his Teddy squadron in first to pin the goblins down and then uses them to finish off the entire group. A short while later, the Goblin King shows up, clearly trying to put some fear into the Teddies. Alan is not even slightly concerned. His bears have been trained to handle C-rank monsters without breaking stride. This is not a challenge. By the time the dust settles, he has gained thousands of experience points from the battle alone. He thinks about it for a moment and figures that sounds about right given that he just cleared out well over 100 goblins. This is going to be his approach going forward. He will move from one orc burrow to the next and keep clearing them out until there are none left. By March of the new year, it is time for Mihai's visit. Sissel comes out to welcome him, and there is an extra layer of excitement about it this time. This is the year Mihai finally graduates, which means he will be living with them for good from now on. Straight after the greeting, Mihai fixes Alan with a cold look and tells him he wants a duel. Alan agrees on the spot. He feels something he has not quite felt before going into one of these. He is 10 years old now, which means the restrictions on his stats have been fully lifted. This is the strongest strongest he has ever been. If there was ever a moment to finally beat Mihai, this is it, and he has no intention of letting it slip by. Before the duel gets underway, both Cecil and Thomas are watching Mihai and can tell without saying a word to each other that something about him is off today. The duel begins. Alan is moving at nearly twice the speed he managed last year. It is a genuine improvement and it shows, but Mihai reads every single attack, blocks each one cleanly, and when the moment comes, he counters with one sharp move that sends Alan's sword flying out of his hand. Mihai wins. Alan stands there in silence, genuinely struggling to understand what just happened. After everything he has put into training, after all the skills he has built up, he still lost. He wonders if the answer lies somewhere in his agility, or whether a sword mastery buff might close the gap. Mihai tells him what he always tells him, that he is noticeably stronger than last year, and this time he even had to work hard enough to break a sweat. Alan reaches out his hand. Mihai looks at it, but instead of accepting it, he walks over to speak with his father instead. Granvelle watches his son approach and tells him plainly how proud he is of how far he has come. Cecil walks over to Alan and tells him he performed well out there. She also points out that Mihai is still well beyond him, which is simply the truth. She then suggests that now that Mihai is home, Alan should take the opportunity to get proper sword lessons from him. Alan thinks that is a great idea. Then Mihai walks back over to the group and tells them that what he is about to share may be difficult to hear. He has a royal duty to fulfill, which means he will not be coming home anytime soon. Thomas and Cecil both ask what kind of duty it is. Mihai tells them it is confidential. All he can say is that he has to leave tomorrow. Cecil stares at him, unable to find words. Then she turns to look at her parents. The guilt written across both of their faces tells her everything she was not just told out loud. Mihai drops to one knee in front of Cecil and makes her a promise. He will be back in 3 years, and when he returns they will have all the time in the world together. Alan stands there listening, and something begins to click into place. He thinks back to Granvelle's encounter with the Viscount and the way noble families tend to prefer children without exceptional talent. This royal duty that Mihai has been called away for is connected to all of that somehow. Alan does not have the full picture yet, but what little he can piece together does not sit well with him. The day of Mihai's departure arrives. He says his goodbyes to the family one by one. Then, just as he is about to step into his carriage, he pulls Alan aside and asks him quietly to look after Cecil while he is gone. Then he gets in and the carriage rolls away. Alan stands there replaying those last few seconds in his head. He could have sworn that Mihai was trembling when he leaned in to speak to him. He tells himself it was probably just his imagination. By May of the following year, Alan has worked his way through nearly every orc burrow in the surrounding area and has climbed to level 35. Now only one remains, the last one and the biggest. He coordinates his summons carefully and moves against the orc village with everything working together in sync. Suddenly, a pair of archer orcs fire at him, so Alan immediately orders his soldiers called Braun to shield him from the incoming attack. After that, he summons 2 spiders to ensnare the orcs in their sticky webs. After defeating the orcs, Alan enters the village, but the moment he steps inside, 200 furious orcs begin charging toward him. Seeing this, he thinks it is the perfect opportunity to farm more experience points. He immediately orders all of his summons to attack. After that, Alan checks his grimoire. The experience points make him light up. The numbers are exactly what he was hoping for. Everything is going to plan, though Alan does notice one thing he was not quite expecting. The orcs are putting up a much harder fight than the goblins ever did. Then a ball of purple energy comes flying straight at him. He barely gets Braun in place in time to block it. He looks up to find the source and sees not one but 3 mini orc kings staring back at him. That stops him because it doesn't make sense. There is only supposed to be one. Before he can adjust, another energy ball comes screaming in from behind and wipes out a cluster of his summons in a single hit. Alan pulls out his steel balls and starts launching them at the mage orcs. One of the balls strikes an orc and kills it instantly, but the orcs are quick learners. After seeing their comrade die, the others hide from Alan's attacks and start launching their magic balls from concealed positions. Meanwhile, a magic orc managed to warn his boss about the chaos outside. After that, the orc forces have now sent over 100 troops directly at Alan. He looks at the situation and decides that sitting back and defending is no longer an option. He needs to turn this into a war of numbers. He summons 20,000 of his teddies and unleashes them all at at once. Slowly but steadily, the tide begins to move in Alan's favor. Just then, the real Orc King arrives. In a single strike, it takes out a group of Alan's summons as if they were nothing. Alan watches it happen and feels the weight of what he is actually dealing with land on him for the first time. This is what a B-rank monster looks like. Alan throws everything he has at the Orc King, summoning creature after creature as fast as he can manage. The Orc King tears through every single one of them before Alan can even finish bringing the next one forward. Then it turns its attention directly on Alan and sends an attack straight at him. He gets a block up just in time, but the force of it pushes him back hard and strips a significant chunk of his HP away. He reaches into his reserves and refills it quickly. He knows he is in real trouble. He is still working out what to do next when Xenoph appears out of nowhere and asks if he is alright. Alan stares at him. The knights were not supposed to arrive until tomorrow at the earliest. Xenoph explains that he noticed the smoke rising from the area and came to investigate. Alan looks around and realizes with a jolt that Xenoph has just seen all of his summons out in the open. He pulls them back immediately and dismisses them. Xenoph does not say a word about it. He just walks calmly toward the Orc King and tells Reborn to deal with the smaller enemies while he handles this one. He approaches the Orc King without any visible concern and begins parrying every attack it throws at him, doing it cleanly and without effort despite the creature being twice his size. Reborn moves at the same time, leaping into the middle of the magic orcs and using a single skill to wipe out the entire group without even appearing to strain himself. Alan watches both of them and cannot believe what he is seeing. He knew Xenoph was powerful, but this makes him reconsider Reborn entirely. He starts wondering how he ever managed to lose a duel to Krina if this is the level he is operating at. Xenoph finishes it moments later, cutting down the Orc King in one clean motion without needing to reach for a single extra skill. Alan is quietly in awe. That night, the knights make camp and Alan sits beside Xenoph to eat. Xenoph tells him that he has worked out that Alan has a talent. It was not hard to figure out. The monster carcasses piling up, the magic stones going missing one after another. Alan hears this and accepts that there is no point in denying it. He admits that yes, he has a talent, but he doesn't want to reveal that he's a summoner. Xenoph then adds that Granvelle has known for a while as well, and that this is precisely what prompted him to bring Alan on as the official huntsman for the household. Alan chokes on his food at the hearing of this. Xenoph tells him he will keep what he saw today between the two of them, but in exchange, Alan has to keep him informed about the progress of his monster hunts going forward. Alan agrees without hesitation. Later, while Alan is wiping down Xenoph's back, he catches a glimpse of the scars layered across it, old wounds that never healed properly, even after all the leveling up Xenoph must have done over the years. Alan looks at them and wonders quietly how the man is still standing after everything those scars represent. About 2 weeks later, Alan has finally worked out the right approach. He now knows exactly how to take down an entire orc burrow without taking a single hit himself, and while keeping the losses among his summons to a bare minimum. He clears one and checks his grimoire. Over 335,000 experience points. He allows himself to feel good about that. Then, on a September afternoon later that year, a pair of messengers arrive at the estate and hand Granvelle a piece of paper. The man tells him that Mihai's dairy. He then mentions that his son Mihai fulfilled his noble duty with dedication but was killed in the process. Granvelle's composure cracks. This was not how it was supposed to go. Granvelle believes they used Mihai as nothing more than a body to throw at a problem, knowing full well that a family of their standing would not be able to push back. The messenger tells Granvelle that he will inform the king about how he feels, but Granvelle does not want that. The messenger tells them he has other stops to make and walks out. Alan sits with the news and his mind drifts back to the day Mihai left. He starts to wonder whether Mihai already knew he was not coming back. Cecil has a little mental breakdown and asks her father what is happening. Granvelle asks everyone except Cecil to leave. He is going to tell her the truth. Out in the hallway, the maids and household staff are already weeping quietly. Mihai meant something real to all of them. Inside the room, Granvelle begins to explain to Cecil that Mihai knew what he was walking into. That for a noble who carries a talent, there is a duty that cannot be refused no matter what it costs. Cecil does not wait to hear the rest of it. She breaks down completely and runs out of the room in tears before he can finish. Alan watches her go and still cannot fully understand what kind of system would ask something like that of its people. What the catch is that makes nobles with talent walk willingly toward their own deaths. Later that afternoon, Alan and Rickle sit together eating, both of them still heavy with the grief of the day. Then the maids start to notice that Cecil is missing. Nobody can find her anywhere, so the whole mansion begins to search. Alan moves quickly through the estate and notices that her window is open. She climbed down from it and left on her own. He tells Granvelle he'll look for her, so he takes off running immediately and makes a silent promise to himself. He is going to find her, and he is going to find her before she does something she cannot take back. Meanwhile, Cecil walks through the town in a daze. She is still shaken by the loss of her brother, Mihai. Then, after a little while, she remembers the last letter he sent to their family. In it, he said he was afraid for his life during his mission, but he still had a duty to fulfill. Thinking about this makes Cecil break down in tears, but what she doesn't know is Alan has been watching everything through his owl summon. He then approaches her. Cecil assumes he came to drag her back home, but Alan tells her he is simply there to wait on her, as always, since that is his role as her manservant. Alan stands quietly for a while. The silence begins to irritate Cecil, and she tells him to just go home. At that moment, her stomach growls. Alan opens his grimoire storage and takes out some ingredients. He quickly prepares a simple meal for her. As Cecil eats, she starts crying again. She tells Alan that Mihai was very strong and never lost to anyone, so she cannot understand how he died so easily. She then admits that she is afraid she might end up the same way. Her fear overwhelms her, and she cries even harder. To distract her, Alan suggests something her that they could leave everything behind and run away together, living peacefully and exploring the world. Cecil is shocked and asks if he has lost his mind. She says that idea is not realistic. Alan then suggests a different plan. He says they can wait until next year. By then, they will both be 12 years old and able to register as adventurers. Even so, Cecil still doubts it will work. She says she will likely be enrolled in the academy by then. Alan tells her that it is her life, and she has the right to decide what she wants. If she does not want to go to the academy, she does not have to. She should choose her own path. Cecil goes quiet after hearing this. She thinks about what Mihai would have done in her situation. After a moment, she tells Alan that they should go home. Alan agrees, but before going, Cecil tells him that her legs are tired, so she orders him to carry her all the way home. He lifts her and starts walking back. As he carries her back, Cecil thanks him for helping her feel a little better. By the time they return to the mansion, Granvelle and the rest of the family rush to Cecil. Instead of scolding her, Granvelle tells her not to worry because he will make sure she does not share Mihai's fate. He explains his plan. Since they will soon be able to mine mithril again, they can offer mining rights to the royal family. In return, they could get Cecil exempted from her duties as a noble. Hearing this, Alan finally understands why Granvelle was so desperate to restart the mines. However, Cecil surprises everyone. She says she will not run from her responsibility. As a member of the Granvelle family, she will fulfill her duty as a noble. Everyone is shocked by her decision. 6 months later, Alan is out in the wild and has just obtained a B-rank magic stone. He reflects on how half a year has passed since Mihai's death and how life in the Granvelle household has mostly returned to normal. Most of the knights have cleared out the orc territories, though Alan and his team handled most of the difficult work. Because of this, preparations for mining have progressed quickly. Zenoff estimates that the mines will be fully operational by summer. Alan believes this will ease Granvelle's worries for now. However, Granvelle is still concerned about Carnal. Since losing access to mithril, Carnal has been unusually quiet. Granvelle suspects he may act soon, so he advises everyone to stay alert. Alan continues his hunting and climbs to the top of a mountain. There, he discovers a nest of armored ants. He realizes they could become a problem for the mithril miners, so he decides to eliminate them. At first, he considers forming a careful plan. Alan has heard about armored ant nests before, and there should be over 1,000 soldiers inside, along with a B-rank queen ant that lays eggs to produce even more. However, he quickly realizes that he does not have enough information about them. Instead, he decides to act without a detailed strategy. He summons his creatures and begins attacking the nest. Since his summons are strong, he expects the task to be quick. However, even after 1 month, the ants ants are still not fully wiped out. Alan starts to suspect that the queen ant is constantly producing new ants to replace the ones he kills. Although he gains a lot of XP from defeating them, their constant return becomes a serious problem. It prevents him from making progress deeper into the nest. Alan realizes he needs to change his approach, or he will never reach the cave. Another month passes. By now, he has killed over 5,000 ants and is starting to lose patience, yet they keep coming back. Then suddenly, the ants stop appearing. Alan notices this and concludes that his persistence has finally paid off. He quickly moves closer and sends an owl summon into the cave. Then he activates shared vision and looks through its eyes, searching for the queen armored ant. However, each attempt fails. He either finds egg chambers or gets ambushed by more ants. After another unproductive day, Alan starts to think he will not find anything. But then, unexpectedly, he finally discovers the queen armored ant. When Alan enters her chamber, he is shocked by its size. It is about 3 times larger than a normal ant. Alan immediately sends in his Teddy summons to deal with the smaller ants. Once they are cleared out, only the queen remains. He orders his summons to attack, but the queen easily knocks them away. Seeing this, Alan decides to overwhelm it with numbers. He summons more creatures and sends them to attack the queen's abdomen. They keep biting and damaging it repeatedly. The damage builds up until the queen can no longer endure it, and it finally dies. At that moment, Alan's grimoire lights up. It informs him that he has defeated the queen armored ant and gained over 45,000 XP. It is already too late to return to town, so he decides to stay there for the night. While looking around the area, he discovers something unexpected. He finds mithril ore inside the cave. The next day, Alan returns to the mansion with the queen ant's exoskeleton. He expects a strong reaction, but to his surprise, Granvelle and the others do not seem impressed. Granvelle says he finds it hard to believe that Alan could defeat an entire ant colony by himself, including the queen. Zenoff agrees, pointing out that even trained knights would struggle to handle such a task. To prove it, Alan reaches into his bag and takes out the mithril ore he found. As soon as they see it, Granvelle and Zenoff are shocked. This confirms that Alan really went into White Dragon Mountain and cleared the ant colony. Granvelle immediately demands a full explanation of what happened. Cecil watches this and realizes that Alan was telling the truth all along. After Alan explains in detail how and where he found the mithril, it becomes clear that he has discovered a new 5th vein for mining. As a reward, Granvelle forgives him for staying out overnight without permission. He also says that since Alan found the vein, he deserves a share in it. Granvelle offers him 30% of the mining rights. Alan is confused and does not fully understand what that means. Sebas speaks up and tells him he will understand the benefits in a few years. Later that year, in October, Alan turns 12. Work on the mithril mines resumes after being inactive for centuries. However, the new vein Alan discovered will not be mined until the following year. Alan reflects on his situation. He has already cleared the surrounding areas of dangerous monsters, so there is little threat nearby. He also no longer has to worry about money because of his share in the mines. Even so, this does not sit well with him. He prefers a more challenging life and does not enjoy staying comfortable for too long. At that moment, Rickle arrives and informs him that a royal messenger has come. Alan wonders what the matter could be. Everyone gathers in the dining room. Alan notices that the situation is serious, especially since Viscount Carnal is also present. Granvelle asks the messenger why they have come. The messenger explains that the Carnal territory has suffered heavy losses in mithril production since the White Dragon moved into their region. Because of this, they have brought a proposal. Granvelle reads the document and is shocked. The proposal is to jointly manage the White Dragon Mountains. The messenger confirms this and says the contract was personally prepared by the Vice Minister of Justice. He also says that Viscount Carnal has already signed it, so only Granvelle's approval is needed. Granvelle clearly thinks the idea is unreasonable, but he remains calm. He says he will first travel to the royal capital to review the situation. The messenger becomes aggressive when Granvelle does not agree immediately. He storms out and warns Granvelle that he will regret this decision. After they leave, Granvelle grips the contract in frustration. He says it is unfair despair that after losing access to the mines for a century, others now want to claim half of it. Granvelle asks whether Zenoff is still at the White Dragon Mountains, and Zebas confirms that he is, adding that he will return within 2 days, so Granvelle decides they will go to the royal capital once Zenoff returns to settle the matter. Later, while Alan and the other servants are discussing the situation, they suddenly hear loud screams from upstairs. Alan runs up immediately and finds bandits trying to abduct Cecil. Granvelle is informed and is shocked by the situation. Alan draws his mithril sword and starts fighting the bandits. However, they are stronger than he expected. He uses buffs to increase his strength and speed. The bandits notice this and throw a gas grenade. The gas knocks Alan unconscious. A few hours later, Alan wakes up beside Cecil. She is tied up, and he soon realizes that he is also tied up. However, as a summoner, he can still fight even while tied. He summons Chappie and uses shared vision to scout the area. He discovers they are inside a large space that looks like a warehouse with the kidnappers nearby. A man named Dagra enters the room and asks why Alan was taken as well. One of the bandits tries to explain, but Dagra punches him in the gut and reminds him that he is in charge. Before leaving, he orders them to kill Alan if he causes trouble. After Dagra leaves, Alan overhears the bandits talking. They talk about how there's some sort of war going on, and that Zenoff is their biggest concern because of his strength. Alan realizes waiting for rescue is not a good option. He decides to act. He tries to reach for his weapon, but realizes he dropped his mithril sword earlier. He also understands that fighting while protecting Cecil will be difficult without it, so he decides to gather more information first. Using Chappie, he scouts further and discovers they are not in a warehouse, but on a large magical airship. The ship is big enough to even have a restaurant. He also confirms that Viscount Carnal and the Royal Messenger are involved. He overhears Carnal talking about using Cecil as a hostage to gain control over the mining rights. At that moment, Cecil wakes up and begins to struggle. The kidnappers consider hitting her to keep her quiet. Alan realizes he cannot wait any longer. He summons Papillion and uses it to put one of the kidnappers to sleep. Then he breaks free from his restraints, stands up, and prepares to deliver some payback. Alan immediately gets to work and uses his summons along with some martial arts to take down the thugs in a matter of seconds. But just as he goes to free Cecil, Dagra spots him, teleports over to him, and kicks him away. Dagra walks over to Alan slowly and asks why he looks so surprised by his teleportation, as if he has never seen a skill before. Alan has no idea what he means by skill, but either way, things are looking really bad for him. Just as Dagra moves in to finish Alan off, Alan's bird summon copies the voice of Viscount Carnal, which throws Dagra off and gives Alan the opening he needs to use his spider summons to wrap Dagra up in their silk while he gets away with Cecil. Dagra struggles and does everything he can to break free, but it is no use. Alan then uses some protection summons to block the way in case Dagra manages to get loose. Alan then runs through the hallway carrying Cecil until he spots a window. Even though it is extremely high up and roughly 100 meters from the ground, Alan tells Cecil they are going to have to jump. Just by the look on Cecil's face, she does not think that is a good idea at all. But Alan thinks it will be fine because he is just going to push his endurance as high as it can go so he can survive the fall. With that, Alan jumps off the airship with Cecil in his arms, but the force of the impact is far greater than he expected. Cecil comes out unharmed, but Alan ends up with 2 broken legs. It is not a big deal though, as he is able to use the Mueller's flower to heal himself right away. After that, he looks over at Cecil and tells her they are heading back home. But Cecil jumps to her feet and fires off a string of questions at Alan, wanting to know how he got so strong and where he even got those monsters from. Alan just tells her there is no time to explain because there is a chance the people on the ship are going to start coming after them. So she hops onto his back and Alan takes off running toward the Granvelle estate. Alan uses his owl summons to scout ahead and sees that Dagra and Carnal are steering the ship straight toward him. So Alan starts taking several different routes in a row, trying his best to shake them off. Alan can tell that Dagra is using tracking magic, but luckily for him, it is only the kind that follows footprints. So Alan jumps onto the rooftops and leaps across them until they reach the walls of the city. Alan uses the shared vision of his summon to check on Dagra and sees that he is still busy searching for them down on the streets, so Alan is certain they have managed to shake him off. Alan then tells Cecil that they are going to be leaving the city and that there is a border checkpoint for the Granville fiefdom at the northern edge of the White Dragon Mountains, even though it will take them a couple of days to get there. Alan thinks that is their best move, and Cecil agrees. Alan summons his protection summons and leaps across their shields so that they leave no footprints behind and cannot be tracked. Later that night, they set up camp and Cecil asks Alan why he never told anyone that he actually had a talent after all. Alan simply replies that nothing good ever comes from making it public. Cecil sees the logic in that and goes to sleep. The next day, they continue their journey and Alan figures they should be pretty far from Carnal City by now. He uses his vision share and sees that Dagra is still out there searching, running along the circumference of the outer edge of the wall and pushing forward. Alan realizes that is a problem because Dagra is bound to come across their footprints eventually, so even though he knows it will slow them down, he keeps leaping across his summoned shields to avoid leaving any more tracks behind. After about a day and a half of traveling, they finally arrive at the border checkpoint of the Granville fiefdom, and the knights there are relieved to see them make it back safely. But just then, Alan uses his shared vision and sees that Dagra has just found their footprints, so he turns around and immediately takes off running with Cecil. After he fills Cecil in on the situation, she wonders why he ran since she figures they would be safer staying with the knights. But Alan tells her that the checkpoint does not have nearly enough men to handle someone like Dagra. He tells her not to worry though, because at the pace they are moving, Dagra will not be able to catch up. He also tells her that before Mihai left on his last mission, he made him a promise to protect her no matter what, and that is exactly what he is doing. Cecil breaks down in tears at hearing that and thanks him. They keep moving the next day and Alan figures they should reach the Granville estate by tomorrow. But then all of a sudden, Hawkins senses something behind them. A murdergalsh is chasing after them. Alan realizes this is not just any random murdergalsh, it is the very same one he faced 3 years ago. He weighs out his options and decides that the best move right now is to take it down here and now. After a moment, he turns around to face it while Cecil hides behind a rock. His plan this time is to hit it with every heavy hitter he has until it goes down. He goes all out, sending in his most powerful summons to distract it while he throws a metal ball. But the murdergalsh has learned from their last fight, blocks the attack, and takes every single one of them down with ease. It then leaps close to Alan and grabs him with both hands, lifts him into the air, and drops him straight into its mouth. Cecil watches in disbelief, thinking Alan has just been bitten in two. But even caught between the murdergalsh's teeth, Alan is still alive. Just before he was picked up, he poured every last stat he had into endurance and HP, and that is the only reason he is still breathing. He then summons his electro blade and drives it straight into the murdergalsh's eye, sending a powerful surge of energy through it that kills it for good. His grimoire lights up to let him know he just earned 82,000 XP for the kill. Cecil runs over and throws her arms around Alan with tears streaming down her face, telling him she genuinely thought he was gone. Alan tells her it is not a big deal since he used the healing leaves to recover, but that aside they are still not safe, so he tells her they need to keep moving before Dagra catches up. But it is already too late for that, as Dagra is standing right behind them. Dagra yells over to them, telling Alan that he made it a nightmare to track them down and that he is going to pay for that. Alan tells Cecil to stay back while he handles this, but he is immediately sent flying because Dagra is just that fast. Alan is already running on empty from the fight with the murdergalsh and can barely even get back on his feet. Dagra slowly walks toward Alan and raises his sword, telling him he is going to make his death as painful as possible. But just before he can follow through, an unexpected fireball cuts in and stops him. Alan looks back and is stunned to see it came from Cecil, making this the very first spell she has ever cast. But Dagra just gets angry about it and backhands her across the face. He tells her how much he would love to finish her off too, but he cannot because he still needs her as a hostage. He then turns back to Alan and is about to land the final blow when he notices that Alan is smiling about something. That is when Xenoph walks in out of nowhere. It turns out Alan had sent his bird summon to alert Xenoph the moment they left the border checkpoint. So now that Zenoff is here, Alan lets himself relax. Dagra stands across from Zenoff and makes no secret of the fact that he hates knights, so he immediately lunges forward and drives his sword straight into Zenoff's chest. But to everyone's shock, it does absolutely nothing. Alan watches this and figures that knights must carry an insane amount of defense. In response, Zenoff simply lets loose his forbidden technique, the Aura Slash, which releases a tremendous burst of force that cuts Dagra clean in two and finishes him off for good. After that, they all make their way back to the estate, where everyone is overjoyed to see that Cecil and Alan made it home safely. Not long after, they sit down for a meeting where Alan lays out that he is certain Viscount Carnal is the one behind all of this, and that his plan was to take Cecil hostage in order to force Granvelle into giving up his rights to the new mithril mines. Granvelle hears this and immediately tells Sebas to get a carriage ready because they are heading to the royal capital right now to report everything. But Alan does not think that is the best move. Going that route would mean the royal messenger, who was mixed up in all of this, would walk away without facing any consequences. Instead, Alan puts forward a different idea. He will give up the mine rights that Granvelle handed him the other day and use that as a bargaining chip to persuade the king to launch a full investigation and bring the matter to a proper resolution. Alan knows this is technically bribery and means Granvelle is going to have to get his hands dirty, but Alan believes that is exactly what it is going to take to keep him and his family safe. Sebas immediately speaks up and tells Alan that he is completely out of line, but Granvelle stops him and says that Alan has a point and that they are going to go with his idea. A little while after that, the king was informed about Cecil's kidnapping, and all those responsible were brought to justice. The Carnal fiefdom was then shut down and placed under royal rule. In light of what Alan and Cecil went through, Granvelle granted them both permission to attend a lecture covering the details of a noble's duty. The old man tells them that nothing they hear today should leave this room. They are given information about the continent they live in. Their kingdom is called Ratash, while the continent to the north of them belongs to the Empire of Jayamut. Although their kingdom has been invaded by the Jimatan kingdom before, the two are currently at peace. The true timeline is known as the Demon Lord history, which began on the Forgotten Continent, where the Demon Lord first appeared 112 years ago. Back then, the Demon Lord wanted to rule over everything and demanded that the leader of every country bow down to him, and as expected, not a single one agreed. Then 55 years after that, they went through what became known as the Great Calamity, where every monster across the kingdom jumped up by one rank, and the Demon Lord finally went on the offensive, invading the central continent with an army of millions of monsters all ranked B and above. Many people lost their lives during that period, and 4 countries were wiped out in just a few short years. Faced with that level of threat, the Empire of Jayamut stepped up to form a 5-continent alliance and called for each country to set up an academy. Any child born with a talent would go through training, and when the time came, they would be sent to the front lines. However, even that was not enough to stop the Demon Lord's push, and more of the population continued to be wiped out. That all changed when a hero named Helmios was born into the Empire and gave humanity something to hold on to again. Helmios was the first person ever born with a hero class, and after he entered battle at the age of 15, the tide of the war began to shift. He was able to take back all the lost land in just 5 years. Alan recalls that when he was choosing his class, both hero and Demon Lord had a 5-star difficulty, which means those 2 classes can determine the fate of the world. The old man explains that the kingdom of Ratash then put out the land reclamation decree to provide support in the war effort. Alan thinks it over and realizes that explains the purpose of the frontier village he was born in, and also why the Baron was always pushing for so much boar meat despite his otherwise frugal way of living. It all finally makes sense to him. On top of that, the elder adds that what people refer to as the noble's duty is essentially a draft that applies to any member of the nobility or royalty born with a talent, requiring 3 years of military service. With that, both Cecil and Alan now fully understand the chain of events that led to Mihai's death. A couple of months later in November, Granvelle thanks Alan for everything he has done for him and tells him he has some money set aside for him. However, Alan notices that there are 3 pouches of money in front of him rather than just one. Granvelle explains that he tried to get Cecil excused from the noble's duty, but her abilities as a wizardess were considered far too valuable and his request was turned down. Since Alan is strong and has a talent of his own, he is able to attend the academy. So Granvelle asks Alan take the 600 gold coins, go along with Cecil to the academy and serve as her bodyguard on the battlefield. Hearing that, Alan finally comes clean to Granvelle and admits that he is a summoner. He promises to do everything in his power to keep Cecil safe, but he also wants to make some changes to the terms. In exchange for 400 gold coins, he wants his family and Krina's family to be freed from the head tax, and on top of that, he will formally step down from his role as manservant, meaning he will operate independently while still providing protection to Cecil. Granvelle listens and tells him he already saw this coming. He then signals to Sebas, and a decorated dagger is brought over and handed to Alan. Granvelle begins by explaining that he was recently promoted to Viscount, and that Alan played a major part in making that happen. The dagger he now holds is a symbol of his standing as a guest of the Granvelle family. It is a sign that the Granvelle family will always have his back, and that he will always be welcome, no matter what situation he finds himself in. Alan looks down at the dagger and begins to take in the fact that this is the end of everything that has built up over the last 12 years. One thing that always stayed in the back of his mind was why he was reincarnated into this world rather than simply being sent here. But now he feels like he understands. Being born into serfdom led him to hunting, which led him to working his way into the service of a baron. And without all of that, he never would have built up the skills needed to attend the academy or even stand a chance against the demon lord. He figures this also explains why hell mode exists. Elmia was looking for someone like him, someone who could push through the brutal reality of being reincarnated with nothing. And since the demon lord is still out there posing a threat even after the hero arrived, they need him as a summoner to help set things right. With all of that in mind, Alan looks Granvelle in the eyes and accepts his request. Winter passes by after that, and Mula and Mash are disappointed since Chappie doesn't have a message from Alan today. But to their surprise, Alan casually walks up to the house and everyone rushes outside, staring at him in shock. Alan comes inside and joins them for dinner, telling them how much he can tell Mash and Mula have grown. Still, he notices that Mula seems shy around him and wonders why that is. Rodden explains that Mula was only about a year old the last time Alan was here, so it makes sense that her memories of him would be pretty fuzzy. This leaves Alan a bit stunned, though he quickly realizes it makes sense since most of his contact with her has been through Chappie. Setting that aside, Bersha thanks Alan for all the money he's been sending home, though she says she hopes he still has enough to get by on his own. Alan assures her that money really isn't a problem anymore, since he's now a guest at the Granvelle estate rather than just a manservant, and he'll be heading to the Academy City in April. His parents are left speechless hearing that, but what shocks them even more is when Alan casually pulls out 100 gold coins and says it's meant for their upkeep. They try to refuse, worried he'll need it for his life at the academy, but Alan tells them not to worry since he already has 600 gold coins saved up. Alan gets ready to leave soon after. Before he does, Mula shyly walks up and asks if he's really her big brother from the letters, and once Alan confirms it, she throws her arms around him in a big hug, with the rest of the family quickly joining in. Alan arrives back at the Granvelle estate shortly after that, and Cecil questions why he's out sweeping the floors even though he's supposed to be their honored guest. Alan simply says he wants to lend a hand before he leaves for the academy. Cecil then asks if he's truly serious about attending the academy and joining the fight in the war, even though a noble's duty doesn't technically apply to him. Alan confirms that it does not matter, since he sees it as entirely his own duty regardless. Krina and Dagora arrive not long after, and Alan introduces them to Cecil, explaining that the two of them will be joining everyone to take the academy entrance exam in 3 days' time. Afterward, they all head inside for dinner, and Granvelle encourages them to make themselves at home, prompting Krina and Dagora to immediately start stuffing their faces with food. Once they're both shown to their rooms, the two of them begin excitedly imagining what life at the academy will be like. During this, Cecil asks Alan whether they plan to tell Krina and Dagora about the war, and Alan says they won't, at least not until it becomes absolutely necessary. Krina is set to be given the title of Baron once she graduates from the academy, which will place the same noble duty on her that Cecil already carries. Whether Dagora will eventually become a noble himself is still uncertain, and will likely depend on how well he performs during his time there. With that in mind, Alan figures it might be worth praying to Elmia for the ability ability to check their stats directly. The next day, the four of them set off for the academy, with the entire noble household gathering to see them off. It doesn't take long before they arrive at Ratash Academy, and upon arrival, they're all surprised by just how many candidates have shown up for the entrance exam. Before anything begins, one of the moderators announces that every applicant must first undergo an appraisal ceremony ahead of the actual exam. Krina isn't quite sure what that means, so Alan explains that it's the same kind of ceremony she went through when she turned 5 years old. Dogora goes first, and his stats turn out fairly decent, though he's a little disappointed to see they haven't changed much since he was 5. Krina goes next, and once the orb shines brightly, the moderator studies her stats and immediately recognizes her as the Sword Lord, expressing how glad they are to have her join. Cecil's stats turn out to be quite solid as well, but what really stands out is her S-rank intelligence, a trait known to be characteristic of a true wizardess. Finally, when it's Alan's turn, the orb lets out a blinding flash of light, and everyone braces themselves expecting something extraordinary. Instead, his stats turn out to be absolutely terrible. Cecil immediately demands to know what's going on, since she knows perfectly well just how skilled Alan really is. But Alan simply tells her to calm down, insisting it's really not that big of a deal. Two dignitaries notice the commotion nearby and walk over to ask what's happening. Cecil explains that the appraisal ceremony shows Alan's skills as E rank, even though he single-handedly managed to defeat the Murdergausch. It's then revealed that one of the dignitaries is actually the elf headmaster, while the other is none other than the legendary hero Helmios. Helmios immediately begins appraising Alan himself, and quickly notices that his stats are actually overpowered underneath it all, concluding that his rank appeared so low simply because he has no magical energy to speak of. Cecil then asks whether Alan will still be allowed to take part in the magic exam, and Helmios agrees, though only on the condition that everyone gets to see what his summoner magic can actually do. Before that, though, Alan wants to gather some information on Helmios first, so he asks him to demonstrate his own abilities. Helmios reaches for the crystal ball, and his stats turn out to be nothing short of A and S rank across the board. When it's finally Alan's turn, he simply summons a small mouse, and everyone watching seems genuinely impressed, since being a summoner is considered fairly rare. With that settled, Alan walks off with the rest of his group to take the written exam, and once the results come in, everyone ends up passing, with Alan scoring the highest and Krina just barely managing to squeeze by. With that done, they're officially recognized as students of the academy, so they head over to the Adventurers Guild to pick up their guild cards. While they're there, the receptionist gives them a rundown of how things typically work inside the dungeon. Once they're briefed, Alan asks whether it would be possible to place a request for some D-rank magic stones. The receptionist agrees, and Alan casually hands over 100 gold coins for 10,000 of them, prompting her to tell him to come back again in a week's time. After that, their adventurer cards arrive, and the receptionist suggests they officially form a party together. Alan wastes no time coming up with a name, calling them the No-Life Gamers. No one has any idea what that's supposed to mean, so Alan explains that it represents those who work their hardest to become the strongest, and once they hear that, everyone agrees it sounds pretty cool. After a while, they get moved into their new shared house, and once everyone is settled in, they sit down together as Alan explains the details surrounding the war and the noble responsibility tied to it. Krina immediately agrees, saying it all sounds like fun, but Dogora hesitates a bit, especially once Alan tells him that half of those sent to the front lines never make it back alive. Dogora thinks it over carefully and realizes that if he manages to pull it off, he'll end up ranked even higher than a knight, so he ultimately agrees to join in. Right then, Alan's grimoire lights up and informs him that the two of them are now officially his party members. What shocks Alan most is realizing that they can actually see his grimoire too. Setting that aside, Krina asks Alan exactly what they'll need to do to prepare themselves for the Demon Lord. Alan explains there are all sorts of things ahead of them, like undergoing trials within the dungeons to grow stronger and gathering better equipment along the way. He also tells them that his own skills develop 100 times slower than normal, which is why he needs so many magic stones just to get through his trials. Because of that, he's hoping to eventually find an MP recovery ring somewhere in the dungeon, since it would help him tremendously. With that in mind, Alan tells them things are about to get busy, so they should all give it their very best. test. The next day, they're introduced to their homeroom teacher, Karlova, and just from the way he addresses the class, Alan can already tell he's going to be a genuinely good teacher. Karlova urges everyone to study hard, reminding them that any score below 40 counts as a failing grade, and he also reminds them of the big exams coming up in July and February. At the academy, students attend classes 4 days a week, with 2 days off. Afternoon classes are tailored specifically to each student's type of magic, which means there aren't really any suited for a summoner like Alan, so he's given permission to use that time freely, though he still plans to sit in on a bit of every class when he can. With everything settled, the official first day of school finally arrives, and the no-life gamers head straight into the C-rank dungeon. There, they encounter the dungeon's operation system, which directs them toward the separate dimension where the dungeon itself is located. Alan is a little confused at first, so the system explains that every dungeon is kept in its own isolated space, so no outsiders are ever able to enter. Hearing this immediately excites Alan, since it means no one else will be around to witness his summoner skills in action. With no further delay, they step onto the first floor, and Alan sends Hawkins out ahead to scout the area. Along the way, they run into a slime, which Cecil easily destroys with a single fireball. Dogora and Krina are amazed by that and admit they wish they had magic of their own, but Alan simply shows them his grimoire and tells them not to worry, since they each have unique skills of their own to rely on. They continue making their way through the dungeon, taking down monster after monster, until they eventually clear the trial of the god. Reaching the entrance to the next floor, the dungeon system asks whether they'd like to leave or continue onward. It explains that if they choose to leave now, their progress will be saved, allowing them to return whenever they're ready. With that in mind, they decide to call it a day and head back home. From that point on, they begin spending all of their days off pushing further through the dungeon, since it always reloads exactly where they left off. This allows Alan to send his summons ahead to farm monsters even while he's sitting through class, something he realizes is the perfect strategy that only a summoner could really pull off. By their 50th expedition, they finally reach the final floor of the C-rank dungeon, where they come across a string of especially tough-looking monsters. Cecil suggests that Alan handle this fight himself, so the group can get a proper sense of his true strength as a summoner. Alan agrees and steps forward, casting his summons to wipe out every monster in an instant, proving to his comrades just how powerful he truly is. After defeating the floor's boss, a small treasure chest appears, and inside it, Alan finds a steel sword. With that, the group celebrates successfully clearing the entire C-rank dungeon. They quickly make their way back to the Adventurers Guild to upgrade their cards from C-rank to D-rank, celebrating what feels like a truly promising start. But while all of this unfolds, a fellow blonde student watches them quietly from a distance. The next day during class, Ryloff tells Alan that Diverg, the famous sword lord, is coming to the academy to teach. He also mentions that Helmios might be coming with him. Alan is excited about meeting Diverg, but he is much less excited about seeing Helmios again. A little later, Karlova announces that in 3 months, every student will have to clear a dungeon as part of their final test. Anyone who fails will be expelled immediately. The only rules are that each party can have no more than 8 students, and they are not allowed to receive help from upperclassmen. Karlova warns everyone not to take the test lightly, because students lose their lives attempting it every year. As soon as the announcement ends, the students rush over to Krina, hoping to recruit her into their parties. The crowd quickly becomes overwhelming, and Krina turns to Alan for help. Alan decides to show everyone how proper recruiting is done. He announces that the 4 of them have already formed a party and are only looking for one more member, specifically a student with healing abilities. He also tells everyone that they have already cleared 2 C-rank dungeons and even shows his guild card to back up his claim. On top of that, he explains that they go dungeon hunting twice every week, and everyone in the party shares the rewards equally. The moment he mentions splitting the profits, the blonde student immediately becomes interested. The following morning, Alan and the others are enjoying an all-you-can-eat breakfast while stuffing themselves with food. Cecil starts worrying because nobody accepted their offer to join the party. Alan is not surprised at all. He explains that clerics, who can use healing magic, are usually recruited by the church, so finding one was never going to be easy. Just then, the blonde student walks over and introduces himself as Keel. He reveals that he is a cleric and says he would like to join their party. Alan happily welcomes him and invites him to eat breakfast with them. Keel politely refuses at first, but Alan insists on buying him breakfast after noticing he only has a glass of water. Keel reluctantly agrees, so he sits down and starts eating just as eagerly as everyone else. While they are eating, Keel asks Alan how much money they usually make from dungeon runs. When Alan tells him they earn nearly 40 silver coins, Keel almost spits out his food in shock. Hearing that is enough to convince him, and he tells the group to count him in for their next dungeon expedition. The following week, Keel joins the party as planned. As they explore the dungeon together, he quickly realizes just how powerful Alan and the others really are. They clear every monster on the floor without much trouble until they finally reach the floor boss. Working together, they defeat the boss with ease. During the fight, Dogora receives a small scratch, so Keel immediately uses his healing magic to patch him up. The rest of the party is impressed by how quickly and smoothly he heals the injury. Once the boss is defeated, a treasure chest appears. Keel rushes over to open it and discovers that it contains a mithril buckler. By the end of the dungeon run, the party has earned 15 gold coins. Just as Alan promised, they divide the money equally among everyone. However, Alan starts noticing that Keel seems much more interested in making money than preparing for the Academy's dungeon exam. Still, since everything is going smoothly, he decides not to complain. Alan then asks Keel if he would like to become a permanent member of their party. He even tells him that they have rented a house where everyone in the group is living together. To everyone's surprise, Keel declines the offer. He explains that clerics are always in high demand, so he would rather work as a freelancer for whichever party is willing to pay him the most. That way, he can earn as much money as possible. About a month later, Alan excitedly heads into the dungeon because he has finally reached the requirement to unlock his new C rank summons. As soon as he arrives, he summons all of them and gives each one a new name. He then experiments with different combinations until he creates a spirit. To his surprise, the spirit can actually speak. Alan assumes that its high intelligence stat is the reason why it can talk. The spirit asks Alan to give her a name, and he chooses Maria, and she happily accepts the name. Alan soon learns that Maria can pass through walls, making her incredibly useful for exploring dungeons. After that, he decides to test his awakened skill. When he activates it, he is able to summon hundreds of Denka summons at once, making him realize just how useful the skill will be in future battles. A few days later, the students gather together as Helmios arrives at the academy alongside Diverg, the Sword Lord, and Sylvia, another Sword Lord, for their special visit. Before Karlova can even finish introducing the guest, Krina eagerly asks Diverg how she can start using her skills properly. Diverg asks why she is so determined to become stronger, and Krina confidently answers that she wants to become as strong as Alan. Hearing that, Diverg looks confused, so Helmios explains that Alan is the black-haired boy he mentioned before. Interested, Diverg tells Krina to follow him so he can give her some advice. He suggests they start with a friendly sparring match. Krina rushes at him with everything she has, but Diverg effortlessly parries every attack before knocking her back with a single strike. Alan and the others watch the sparring match and know the result is not surprising. After all, Diverg is a veteran swordsman with more than 40 years of experience. Diverg keeps knocking Krina down over and over again, but Alan finds something strange about the training. Instead of giving her advice or correcting her mistakes, Diverg simply keeps fighting her at full strength. No matter how many times Krina is knocked to the ground, she always gets back up and charges at him again. This continues until sunset, but Krina still refuses to give up. She knows that if Alan were in her position, he would never quit, so she refuses to quit either. Alan realizes that Krina is pushing herself so hard because she feels like she has fallen behind everyone else since she is still unable to use her skills. Even after being knocked back again and again, she keeps standing up. Finally, when she is on the verge of collapsing, she suddenly activates her slash skill for the first time. Although Diverg blocks the attack, the skill is strong enough to damage his sword. Krina smiles in relief after finally using her skill, but the exhaustion immediately catches up to her and she collapses. Alan quickly runs over to help her. A few days later, the group heads back into the dungeon. Alan introduces everyone to Maria, the spirit he recently summoned, and everyone warmly greets her. Krina is especially cheerful because she can now use her skills whenever she wants. The party continues clearing monsters at a rapid pace, and before long, they earn their C high-rank adventurer licenses, since Keel has decided to join them again. Alan suggests celebrating everything with a huge feast. However, Keel quietly declines. He explains that enjoying such a luxurious meal would only make him feel guilty because his family is struggling to get by. Curious, everyone asks him what he means. Keel explains that after he was accepted into the academy, his family moved to the academy city with him, but they have been having a very difficult time making enough money to live comfortably. Knowing his family is suffering, he cannot bring himself to enjoy an expensive celebration. Alan refuses to let one of his friends live in poverty. He offers to let Keel and his family move into their house. In return, they can help with the cooking, cleaning, and other household chores, and they will also receive a fair salary for their work. Keel is confused by Alan's kindness and asks why he would do so much for him. Alan simply smiles and says that is what friends are for. Later that night, Keel arrives with his family. Alan quickly notices that there are no adults with them. Keel's younger sister introduces herself as Nina and sincerely thanks Alan for welcoming them into his home. Everyone heads inside and enjoys a large feast together. Alan encourages everyone to make themselves at home and even tells them to ask for more food if they want seconds. While everyone is eating, Alan notices that Keel's name still has not appeared in his grimoire. Even though they have become friends, he quietly wonders why that is. Around the same time, Cecil mentions that she could tell Keel and his family were once nobles just from the way Nina greeted everyone. Keel shyly admits that they used to be nobles, but their family lost its title. That is why he now lives with his younger sister and the loyal servants who had nowhere else to go. Cecil apologizes for bringing up such a painful subject, but Keel says he does not mind because he has already gotten used to living as a commoner. Keel is then surprised to learn that Cecil is also a noble. However, the moment he hears that she belongs to the Granville family, his expression immediately hardens. Keel reveals that he is from the Carnal family and that his father was Viscount Carnal. He believes it was the Granville family that ruined his family and caused them to lose their noble status. Hearing that, Alan finally understands why Keel reacted that way. He remembers Viscount Carnal once boasting about having one talented child and one untalented child. Those children were Keel and Nina. Cecil calmly asks Keel to hear her out before judging them, but first she asks his servants to leave the room. Once they are alone, she and Alan explain everything that really happened. They tell Keel that Viscount Carnal tried to steal the Granville family's rights to a mithril mine. He even hired assassins and kidnapped Cecil to get what he wanted. Alan was the one who rescued her and stopped the plan. Keel is left speechless. He never imagined his father could have done something so terrible. Alan then asks what kind of relationship he had with his father. Keel remembers that when he was young, his father spent plenty of time with him and treated him kindly. Everything changed after his magical talent was discovered. His father suddenly sent him away to another town, where he lived on a small allowance and never received the proper education expected of a noble. Then, when he turned 10, his father finally sent him a tutor to prepare him for the Magic Academy. That gave Keel hope that he had finally been accepted as a true member of the Carnal family. That hope disappeared last October. Without any warning, his allowance suddenly stopped arriving. Soon afterward, a royal messenger informed him that the Carnal family had been dissolved because of a plot involving the Granville family. He was also told about the noble duty system and agreed to serve for 5 years in the military so that he could restore the Carnal family's noble status and become its new head. Cecil immediately notices something strange. Noble duty normally lasts only 3 years, not 5. Keel apologizes for everything his father did and says he understands if they no longer want him living with them. Even so, he promises that he will do everything he can to restore the Carnal family's honor. Alan realizes that Keel has a dream he is willing to fight for, just like everyone else in the group. Because of that, Alan still asks him to stand beside them when the war begins. Keel cannot understand why Alan is still treating him so kindly after everything that happened. Alan tells him none of that matters anymore. He reminds Keel that nearly half of the soldiers sent to the front lines never make it back alive, so all of them need to become as strong as possible if they want to defeat the Demon Lord and survive. Keel still struggles to understand why everyone continues to accept him, but Alan simply repeats that this is what friends do and tells him to give it everything he has. Hearing those words, tears begin running down Keel's face as he finally accepts their friendship. At that very moment, Alan's grimoire notifies him that Keel Keel has officially become a member of his party. It doesn't take long for Keel and his family to settle into their new home, and seeing how quickly they adjust makes Alan feel confident that everything is going to work out. With that problem solved, his thoughts begin to wander. He remembers the promise that was made to Keel about restoring the Carnal family name after serving on the front lines for 5 years. The more Alan thinks about it, the more it bothers him. According to what he knows, the required service period is actually 3 years, not 5. That means someone either lied to Keel or deliberately changed the rules. Wanting to get to the bottom of it, Alan decides he will investigate the matter when he gets the chance. The following day, Alan and the rest of his party prepare to challenge the B rank dungeon once again. Unlike the dungeon they cleared before, this one is famous for having countless dangerous traps hidden throughout its floors. Because of that, everyone drinks a bottle of panacea before entering. The medicine tastes terrible, and every member of the party complains about how awful it is, but they know the effect is worth putting up with the disgusting flavor. Once they finish preparing, Alan summons his giant ostriches, and the entire group climbs onto them. Riding the summons allows them to travel through the dungeon much faster than walking, letting them avoid wasting time on weaker monsters along the way. Before long, they arrive at a room with what appears to be a treasure chest sitting in the middle. The moment Keel sees the chest, he rushes toward it without thinking. Just before he reaches it, Cecil quickly calls out and stops him. She points out that a treasure chest placed so openly inside a dungeon is almost certainly a trap. Alan agrees with her reasoning and decides it would be safer to investigate first instead of opening it right away. Rather than taking the risk himself, he asks Maria to check the chest. Maria carefully approaches it, but the instant she gets close, the treasure chest suddenly transforms into a mimic monster. Before the creature can even launch an attack, Maria calmly activates her psychokinesis skill. The invisible force completely stops the mimic in its tracks, leaving it unable to move. She then finishes it off with ease before it has any chance to fight back. Watching the battle, Alan is impressed by how much Maria has improved. Not too long ago, defeating a B-rank monster would have required almost all of her mana. Now she is able to defeat one while using only about half as much. Seeing his teammates grow stronger reassures Alan that all of their hard work has been paying off. After defeating the mimic, the real reward finally appears. Inside the chest is a mithril halberd, a valuable weapon that can be sold for a high price. Alan estimates they should easily receive around 50 gold coins for it, making the trip worthwhile already. The group continues exploring deeper into the dungeon, carefully watching for more hidden traps. After walking for a while, Alan suddenly loses consciousness without any warning. When he finally opens his eyes again, he finds the rest of the party standing around him with worried expressions. Cecil immediately tells him that he triggered a sleep trap. She reminds him that she warned everyone to drink the panacea before entering the dungeon. However, Alan surprises everyone by admitting that he intentionally skipped drinking it. He explains that he wanted to experience the trap himself, so he could study exactly how it worked. Although the others are shocked by his risky decision, Alan is more interested in understanding the dungeon than worrying about himself. While Alan carefully examines the trap and thinks through what happened, Dogora and Krina decide to pass the time by having a quick sparring match. The two exchange blows while waiting for Alan to finish his investigation. Fortunately, Alan doesn't need much time before figuring everything out. He gathers everyone together and explains what he has learned. According to his findings, sleep traps will always affect animal-type summons without exception. However, they have absolutely no effect on grass-type summons or spirit-type summons. This discovery gives the party valuable information that could help them avoid similar traps in future dungeons. Not long after that, Dogora notices something exciting. He realizes that he can finally unlock and is able to use his skills. The rest of the party is surprised by his sudden improvement, and Alan immediately checks Dogora's status to see what has changed. Sure enough, his experience points have increased dramatically since they started clearing the B-rank dungeon. Excited by his progress, Dogora suggests they stop spending so much time investigating every trap and focus on clearing the dungeon instead. More than anything, he wants the chance to test his new skill against stronger enemies. The rest of the party agrees, and they continue challenging the dungeon week after week. After spending the next 2 months exploring the dungeon every weekend, their hard work finally pays off. They eventually reach the deepest floor of the B-rank dungeon, where the final challenge is waiting for them. Standing before the party is the floor boss, a gigantic gigantic monster known as the Huge Boar. Its enormous body and powerful presence make it clear that this battle will be far tougher than anything they have faced so far. Even so, Alan doesn't look worried. Over the past 2 months, every member of the party has grown much stronger through constant training and battle, with everyone's abilities improving and their teamwork becoming better than ever. Alan is confident that they have what it takes to defeat the Huge Boar and finally conquer the B rank dungeon. Since the party levels up at a normal pace, Alan finds it slightly annoying knowing they'll eventually outpace him. Setting that aside, he opens things up by giving everyone a protection buff, and the group works together to bring down the massive boar, clearly gaining the upper hand before Krina delivers the finishing blow that ends the fight for good. Everyone celebrates, and Keel follows up by using his high heel skill to restore everyone's wounds on the spot. Alan takes a moment to reflect on how quickly they cleared their first B rank dungeon, and considering how much stronger his party has become, he's starting to realize that normal mode isn't something to take lightly. The fact that humanity is still struggling against demons puts into perspective just how powerful monsters can be, which only strengthens his resolve to push everyone in the party to an extremely high level before they graduate. Over the next month, Alan sends his summons repeatedly into the B rank dungeon to farm monsters, and the consistent effort pays off with large amounts of gold coins and magic stones. With the earnings, the party upgrades their equipment, picks up a cart to make travel back and forth from the house much easier, and gets a magic-operated clock for keeping track of time during dungeon runs. By August, they've conquered their second B rank dungeon, and the summer break stretches 2 months ahead of them. Alan decides to check in on his family by sending one of his bird summons named Popo to visit them, and they're completely caught off guard by the fact that he can even do something like that. After confirming everyone is doing well, he learns that Mula went through her appraisal ceremony and came out with no talent, which leaves her feeling down about it. Alan tries to lift her spirits by pointing out that it just means she's in the same boat as their mom and dad, who don't have talents either. On a more positive note, Rodden shares that he'll be taking on the role of chieftain for the new frontier village starting next April. Alan congratulates him and notes that with his parents well into their 30s now, it makes sense for them to be stepping into a new chapter. After that, Alan flies over to the Granvelle estate still in bird form and has a quick conversation with Baron Granvelle. After exchanging pleasantries, Alan mentions that he's gotten to know Keel, the son of Viscount Carnal, and that despite his father's reputation, Keel is genuinely a good kid. He also passes along the detail that a royal messenger told Keel his family would receive amnesty after 5 years of noble service rather than the standard 3. Granvelle finds that immediately suspicious and points out that Keel carries the cleric skill, which makes that offer look a lot more like a trap than a reward. He explains that serfs and commoners with healing abilities are typically put to work helping the sick and injured within the kingdom, meaning very few of them ever end up on the front lines. That scarcity makes clerics extremely valuable, and because of that, many end up exploited as personal healers for young nobles, worked to exhaustion with no real path out. Granvelle goes further and mentions that some nobles even establish secret agreements to keep clerics on the front lines long after their compulsory service ends, and that the only way most of them ever come back is in a coffin. He's convinced that's exactly what was lined up for Keel. Alan admits it's completely reprehensible and starts to piece together the full picture. After Keel was stripped of his noble status, the royal messenger used that vulnerability to maneuver him toward the war effort. What Alan still can't figure out is what the royal messenger personally stands to gain from any of this, and the more he thinks about it, the more it feels like someone is pulling strings from further up the chain, not willing to let Keel get used like that. Alan considers going straight to the king about it, but Granvelle cuts that off and insists on handling it himself, explaining that the Granvelle name is already tied up in this and he has no intention of letting it get dragged through the mud. Alan backs off and lets him take the lead. About a month later, the party gets their adventurer cards updated, and the receptionist does a double take when she sees that a group of children have all reached B rank. She assumes they're going after the A rank dungeon next and warns them to at least go over the relevant documentation first, since the monsters on that floor operate on a completely different level. Alan and his party don't waste much time before heading in anyway, and they spend several days scouting the area to map out the monster types and trap placements. After all that effort though, Alan comes away disappointed because there's no sign of anything resembling a finish line anywhere. They press on regardless, pushing deeper into the dungeon, and run into a cluster of B-rank monsters, which the party dismantles in seconds. Then Dagora gets caught off guard by a monster appearing from a blind spot, and both he and Cecil tumble straight into a teleport trap, scattering them to a random location somewhere in the dungeon. Alan tells Krina to handle the incoming Cyclops, and immediately summons several Maria copies to go track them down. As expected, Dagora and Cecil have been dropped into a rough spot and are struggling to hold their own against the number of monsters surrounding them. After taking a heavy hit, Dagora uses his last healing leaf, and just as a fresh wave of monsters closes in on them, they brace themselves for the worst. Then Maria materializes and wipes out the monsters with her magic. Once the dust settles, she hands both of them a healing flower to top up their HP. Alan watches the whole thing through his synced connection with Maria, relieved they've been found, and immediately tells the others he's on his way to their location. The group mounts the ostriches and pushes as fast as they can toward Dagora and Cecil, and Alan is quietly hoping they can get there before anything else goes wrong. Of course, things get worse. A pack of massive boars charges directly at Dagora and Cecil, and while they manage to bring them down, something far more dangerous appears behind them, and it's immediately clear this one isn't going to go down the same way. The monster immediately tries to attack Dagora, but before it can overpower him, Alan arrives just in time and uses his scorpion summon to temporarily paralyze the monster. This gives Dagora the opening he needs, and he lands a powerful blow that takes the monster down instantly. Dagora and Cecil both thank Alan for saving them, and after that, they begin thinking about the best way to escape the dungeon. Cecil and Dagora consider staying in a tighter formation so they can protect each other more easily, but Cecil thinks it would be better to simply fight their way through the dungeon and keep moving forward. Shortly after, they finally reach the rank floor boss, and everyone is left in shock when they see the massive armored monster standing before them. The creature looks incredibly powerful, and the others immediately feel intimidated by its overwhelming presence. Alan, however, sees the situation differently. Instead of being afraid, he thinks that fighting the armored monster could be the perfect opportunity to test their abilities. If they manage to defeat this monster, they will have proof that their attacks are strong enough to work against a rank monsters. With that in mind, Alan prepares himself for the battle, knowing that this fight will give them a clear idea of just how much stronger they have become. Alan immediately gets to work by dropping his Wally summons directly onto the monster, causing a massive explosion. However, the boss is still alive after the attack. Krina quickly charges toward it, but the monster manages to crush her beneath its hand. For a moment, everyone thinks she has been crushed, but Krina suddenly emerges from underneath the monster's hand and assures everyone that she is fine. After that, Alan and the rest of his party work together and easily defeat the floor boss. They celebrate their victory for a while before Keel notices the treasure chest. He opens it and is shocked to find a scarletite axe inside. Everyone agrees that the weapon would be perfect for Dagora, allowing him to replace his old mithril axe with something much stronger. As they reach the exit of the floor, the dungeon system suddenly informs them that they have been awarded their first certificate of success. This means that by clearing 5 A-rank dungeons, they have earned the right to challenge an S-rank dungeon. Everyone is shocked when they hear this because they had no idea that S-rank monsters even existed. After that, summer break passes, and Alan officially turns 13 years old. Almost every student in Alan's class manages to clear the dungeon without being expelled. Only 3 students fail, which is considered a very good retention rate for the class. Their classmates also begin to realize just how powerful Alan and his party have become after hearing that they managed to clear an A-rank dungeon on their own. Meanwhile, Ryloth approaches Alan and asks him to have a sparring match. Alan accepts, and as the two begin fighting, Alan is reminded of the times he used to spar with Mihai. Just like back then, Alan eventually ends up losing the battle. At the same time, Karlova spars with Krina and quickly realizes just how capable she is. After seeing her strength for himself, he has no doubt that Krina played an important role in helping Alan's party clear the A-rank dungeon. Once the sparring matches are over, Karlova approaches Alan and Krina with some important news. He tells them that the headmaster wants to see both of them. Alan and Krina are surprised by this and begin wondering why the headmaster has suddenly called for them. As they make their way to the headmaster's office, Karlova tells Alan and Krina that even someone as powerful as himself has only managed to conquer 3 A-rank dungeons. If Alan and his party are able to conquer the S-rank dungeon they are planning to challenge, they will go down in history. According to Karlova, no one except Lord Diverg has ever managed to accomplish such a feat. Shortly after, they arrive at the headmaster's office. The headmaster introduces himself and explains that he is a 1,000-year-old elf who has served as the headmaster and city administrator for more than 43 years. Without wasting any time, the headmaster gets straight to the reason he called them there. He tells Alan and Krina that he wants them to participate in the martial arts tournament that will be held the following week. Alan learns that the tournament will have 16 initial participants, and magic will not be allowed during the fights. Alan is confused about why he was chosen to participate when he knows that Dagora is a much better overall attacker than him. The headmaster explains that he is fully aware of Dagora's abilities. However, Dagora is not allowed to participate because he is an axe user, which makes him ineligible for the tournament. Alan thinks about the situation and realizes that there is nothing new for him to learn from participating in the tournament. Since he sees it as nothing more than a waste of his time, he decides to turn down the invitation. As a result, Krina becomes the only one from their party who is enrolled in the martial arts tournament. The day before the martial arts tournament, Viscount Granvelle visits Alan and his party. He tells them that he spoke with the king about the future of the Carnal family. Unfortunately, the king made no promise to restore the family to nobility. Keel and his sister immediately look sad after hearing the news, but Granvelle places a box in front of them and explains that this is the real reason for his visit. Inside is a contract that would restore the Carnal family to a good standing. However, there is one major condition. Keel must serve in the war for 5 years, though that period can be shortened if he makes significant contributions on the battlefield. Granvelle tells Keel that the contract has already been approved, so he doesn't have to worry about whether it will be accepted. Ryloff then speaks up and explains that he is there on behalf of his father, Cowby Hamilton, who is the liege lord of both the Granvelle and Carnal families. Ryloff explains that while Keel is away fighting on the front lines, the Hamilton family will take care of Keel's family and make sure they are safe. Keel is extremely grateful for the offer, but he can't help wondering why the Hamilton family is doing so much for them. It seems almost too kind. Granvelle simply explains that he is only doing his duty and trying to do what is right. Granvelle then reveals something else. He points out that the royal messenger who gave Keel the false information about his family's restoration may have been sent by the Crown Prince, Envel. However, there is currently no direct evidence connecting Envel to the scheme, so there is nothing they can do about it yet. The current king is also getting old, and Envel will likely become the next king within the next 5 years. Because of that, there is no guarantee that Envel will honor the contract once he takes the throne. Granvelle asks Keel if he is still willing to sign it despite the risk. Keel isn't willing to give up now. After everything he has been through, he decides to accept the conditions and agrees to sign the contract. The day of the martial arts tournament finally arrives. Alan notices the Crown Prince and stares at him with a cold and serious expression. Meanwhile, Krina manages to win the entire tournament, earning the right to face Diverg, the legendary sword lord. The battle begins, and Krina immediately launches her strongest attack at Diverg. However, the attack doesn't even leave a scratch on him. Diverg easily withstands it and sends Krina flying backward. Diverg then delivers a powerful kick that nearly knocks Krina out for good. Even so, Krina still refuses to give up. Despite the overwhelming difference in strength, she gathers what little energy she has left and charges toward Diverg once again. Diverg also charges forward. The two fighters clash, but the difference between them is simply too great. Diverg completely overpowers Krina and defeats her, leaving her in such terrible condition that she has to be rushed to the infirmary. Alan and the others immediately hurry over to check on her. Alan places a healing leaf on Krina, helping her recover from her injuries. Krina soon begins crying when she realizes that she couldn't even land a single hit on Diverg, despite giving the fight everything she had. Alan tries to comfort her by telling her that she shouldn't see the defeat as proof that she's weak. Instead, she should think of it as proof that there is still a huge amount of potential inside her that she hasn't unlocked yet. Those words completely change Krina's mood. Instead of feeling hopeless, she begins to think about how much stronger she could become in the future. Just then, Envel arrives and announces that he wants to speak with Granvelle. The two sit down together, and Envel immediately gets to the point. He tells Granvelle that he knows it was originally his idea to restore the Carnal family's nobility. Envel then explains that the Gematan Empire is currently currently facing a very difficult battlefront in the war and urgently needs reinforcements. He says that he is considering sending Cecil to the front lines. The moment Granvelle hears this, he immediately becomes nervous. Invel tells him not to overreact. He argues that since Granvelle is a supporter of the Alliance, it is only fair that he fulfills the responsibilities that come with supporting it. Alan secretly listens to their conversation and begins to understand more about the political situation in the kingdom. The political landscape appears to be divided into two major groups. The Alliance faction wants to support the other nations in the fight against the Demon Lord, while the Kingdom First faction believes their own country should be prioritized above everything else. Invel then looks directly at Granvelle and gives him an ultimatum. He tells Granvelle to abandon the contract restoring the Carnal family's nobility. If Granvelle agrees to do that, Invel promises to forget everything that was discussed earlier. Alan immediately understands what Invel is trying to accomplish. He realizes that Invel wants Keel to serve as his daughter's personal healer. Clerics like Keel are extremely valuable because of their healing abilities, so Invel clearly wants to take advantage of his skills. Alan suddenly steps into the conversation and introduces himself as the leader of the party that Krina and Cecil belong to. He explains that he has been given the responsibility of protecting Cecil from every possible danger. Alan then makes his position clear. If Invel insists on sending Cecil into the middle of the battlefield, Alan says that he will personally risk his life to protect her. 3 months later, Alan and his party are preparing to challenge the ultimate floor boss, the Heavy Dragon. The others feel somewhat nervous about facing such a powerful monster, but Alan reassures them. He tells them that they have nothing to worry about because he trusts their abilities and believes their weapons are strong enough to defeat the dragon. Alan begins the battle by placing his defensive summons around the party. He wants to make sure they have protection in case the dragon's attacks are too powerful. He then summons his Wali summons and drops them directly onto the heavy dragon. The attack causes the massive dragon to scream in agony. However, the heavy dragon quickly retaliates. It opens its mouth and unleashes a powerful wave of fire breath toward Alan and the others. They only manage to survive the attack because Alan's defensive summons protect them from the flames. The heavy dragon begins charging up another powerful blast. When it finally releases the attack, several of Alan's summons are destroyed. Alan immediately tries to summon more defensive summons, but there isn't enough time. The dragon is already preparing another attack, and Alan realizes that they won't survive another direct hit. At this point, Alan knows that everyone has to give the battle everything they have. If they don't defeat the dragon quickly, they are all going to die. Suddenly, everyone notices something strange about Krina. A powerful aura begins surrounding her body. Without hesitation, Krina charges straight toward the heavy dragon. The dragon responds by blasting her with its powerful fire breath, but Krina somehow manages to withstand the flames. To everyone's shock, Krina continues moving forward and slices one of the heavy dragon's legs completely off. Alan immediately realizes what is happening. Krina's extra skill has activated, massively increasing her strength. On top of that, all of her stats have been boosted by 3,000 points. The heavy dragon desperately tries to end the fight before Krina can become an even bigger threat. However, the dragon is already completely outmatched. Krina has become far too powerful for the heavy dragon to handle. With her incredible boost in strength, she launches one final attack. The battle ends with a single devastating blow from Krina, instantly defeating the heavy dragon. After the battle ends, Krina levels up, but instead of celebrating, she looks a little upset because she has finally reached her level cap. Alan never expected this to become a problem so soon, even though everyone in the group is only 13 years old. Every single one of them has already hit their level limit. Alan believes the reason for this is because the Demon Lord increased the rank of every monster in the world. Since they have been fighting much stronger monsters than normal, they have gained experience much faster than anyone expected. Dogora asks Alan if this means they have reached a dead end and can no longer become stronger. Alan immediately tells him not to give up because it is not over yet. He says that all they need to do now is learn how to freely control their extra skill. Alan is convinced there has to be a way to break past the level cap. After all, he played plenty of games in his previous life where there was always always a hidden method to get around a level limit. As far as he is concerned, it is simply a matter of figuring out what the requirements are. Not long after that, spring break comes to an end, and most of the students in Alan's class are promoted to their second year at the academy. Karlova stands in front of the class and welcomes everyone back. He explains that the class roster will stay the same, but he also announces that they will be getting a few transfer students this year. A few moments later, the new students walk into the classroom. The moment Alan notices their pointed ears, he immediately realizes they are elves. He is genuinely surprised because this is the first time he has ever seen real elves in this world. The white-haired girl introduces herself as Sophie, the princess of the Elven Kingdom. Standing beside her is Volmar, who introduces himself as Princess Sophie's personal bodyguard. Sophie slowly looks around the classroom, and at first everything seems perfectly normal. However, the moment her eyes land on Alan, she suddenly freezes and shudders. Alan immediately assumes she is making fun of his black hair, so he starts getting annoyed and quietly gets angry. The dwarf green-haired transfer student then steps forward and gives a confident introduction that quickly wins over the entire class. She introduces herself as Meru. Alan quickly realizes that Meru has the personality of a tomboy, which catches him completely off guard because he has never met someone like that since coming to this world. After all of the introductions are finished, Karlova suggests that the 3 transfer students join Alan's party since they currently only have 5 members. Alan agrees without any complaints. Later, during lunch, Alan introduces his party to the new students. He tells them that their group's name is the No Life Gamers before explaining that they spend every day exploring dungeons together. He then asks if that schedule will cause any problems for them. Sophie immediately says she has no problem with it. She also explains that her talent is Spirit Mage. Volmar says that his talent is Archer, while Meru reveals that his talent is the extremely rare Talos General. At the moment, Meru admits that her talent is still fairly limited, but she is determined to become stronger no matter what. She reminds everyone that they only have 2 years left before they are sent to fight on the front lines. Alan can clearly see how serious all 3 of them are about becoming stronger. Impressed by their determination, he officially welcomes them into the party. Later that day, Alan runs into the headmaster, who casually mentions that he is on his way to check in on Princess Sophie. Hearing that reminds Alan that Sophie is a member of the royal family of the Elven Kingdom. Compared to someone with that kind of status, even the Academy's headmaster has to treat her with the greatest amount of respect. Before leaving, the headmaster asks Alan to do everything he can to keep Princess Sophie safe since she is now a member of his party. As the party leader, Alan accepts the responsibility without any complaints. Later that day, everyone sits down together for lunch. Just as Krina is about to start eating, Alan and the others notice that Sophie, Volmar, and Meru all stop to say a short prayer before touching their food. Curious, Alan asks what they are doing. Sophie confirms that they are offering a prayer to the sovereign spirits. She explains that they pray to Lord Rosen, the deity who blessed their people with spirit magic. Alan finds that really interesting and wants to know more. He then turns to Meru and asks if he also worships a deity. Meru shakes her head and says that he does not. SH7E explains that Lord Dargani, the god his people worship, specifically told them that they do not need to pray to him. Meru goes on to explain that Lord Dargani is also known as the Dungeon Master and is the deity who rules over all the dungeons in the world. After hearing that, Sophie becomes curious herself and asks Alan which deity he and his friends worship. Alan pauses for a few seconds because he is not sure how to answer. Before he can say anything, Keel suddenly speaks up with complete confidence and says that they worship Lord Elmia, the god of creation. After finishing lunch, Dogora changes the subject and asks Sophie if she and the others still plan to conquer the B-rank dungeon. He then turns to Alan and asks if the rest of them will be joining the expedition. Alan shakes his head and says they will not. He explains that they need to make the best use of their time because he wants to conquer the A-rank dungeon before summer break arrives. Krina wonders how they could possibly accomplish something like that in such a short time. Alan explains that the easiest solution is to split the party into 2 groups. According to his plan, Alan and Dogora will accompany the new members through the B-rank dungeon so they can level up as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, Krina and the rest of the party will continue challenging the 3rd A-rank rank dungeon on their own. The following day, everyone heads into the dungeon exactly as planned. After entering, Alan uses his grimoire to display everyone's abilities and status. Sophie is surprised by how much information his grimoire can reveal about each person. Dogora looks over the information and notices that Meru is around the same age as the rest of them. However, he is shocked when he sees that Sophie is 48 years old, while Volmar is already 67. Sophie lets out a small laugh before explaining that elves have incredibly long lifespans. Because of that, someone in their 40s or 60s is still considered fairly young by elven standards. With that out of the way, Alan summons his creatures and immediately sends them out to scout the surrounding area. After confirming the safest route, the group uses Fran to travel through the dungeon much more quickly. Before long, they run into a giant spider monster blocking their path. Meru rushes forward and tries to attack first, but the giant spider easily swats her away before he can do any real damage. Volmar calmly steps forward, draws his bow, and fires a single arrow. The attack instantly brings the giant spider down, leaving Dogora impressed by just how skilled an elven archer can be. Meru suffers a small injury during the fight, so Sophie immediately uses her spirit magic to heal her. Once she is done, she explains that although her healing magic is not as powerful as a cleric's, everyone can still rely on her whenever they need medical support. A while later, the group takes a break to rest. During the break, Alan asks Sophie why she always calls him Sir instead of simply using his name. Sophie explains that it is because Alan is the person mentioned in an ancient prophecy. According to the prophecy, a boy with raven black hair would one day free the world from the darkness threatening it. His black hair was the biggest clue. That is why, the moment she first saw Alan in the classroom, she immediately believed he was the person the prophecy had been talking about all along. About a month later, Sophie's abilities have improved dramatically. Thanks to all of her training, she is finally able to use her extra skill. The skill summons the Grand Earth Spirit, whose power is great enough to defeat the floor boss with ease. After the battle is over, Sophie turns to Alan and sincerely thanks him for helping her become strong enough to unlock her extra skill. She admits that she never would have reached this point without his guidance. With that, the newest members of the No Life Gamers quickly clear all 3 B rank dungeons along with 1 A rank dungeon. At the same time, the original members of the party successfully conquer their 4th A rank dungeon, making their overall progress much faster than anyone expected. The day before summer break begins, Alan and Krina are suddenly summoned to the headmaster's office. When they arrive, Alan is surprised to see Helmios waiting there as well. The headmaster explains that another martial arts tournament will be held soon and says he wants Alan to participate this year. Alan immediately refuses. He says he has no interest in entering a tournament just to show everyone how strong he is without getting anything in return. The headmaster then asks Alan if he knows about the Sovereign Spirit's prophecy. He explains that many important people believe Alan may play a major role in saving the world one day. Because of that, they want to see exactly what his summoned creatures and abilities are capable of. Instead of changing Alan's mind, that only gives him another reason to refuse. Alan points out that showing off his true strength would only make the demon army see him as a much bigger threat than they already do. Seeing that words alone will not convince him, Helmios quietly takes off his mana recovery ring and tosses it toward Alan. Knowing exactly how valuable an item like that is, he tells Alan that the winner of this year's tournament will earn the right to challenge him. If Alan defeats him, the mana recovery ring will become his prize. Alan immediately puts the ring on to test it for himself. The moment he feels how quickly it restores his mana, he is genuinely impressed. After seeing how useful it is, he happily changes his mind and agrees to enter the tournament. After returning home, Alan explains the entire situation to the rest of the party. Everyone supports his decision and agrees that he should focus entirely on preparing for the tournament while they continue their own training. With that settled, Alan travels across the kingdom, visiting every adventurer's guild he can find and collecting every magic stone available. While he is away doing that, the rest of the party continues clearing their 5th A rank dungeon. After months of hard work and persistence, Alan finally reaches Summoner level 7, which allows him to summon B rank creatures. By October, he has turned 14 years old and finally reunites with the rest of his party after spending months training hanging on his own. The moment Krina sees him again, she cannot help wondering just how much stronger he has become. She is especially excited because she finally gets the chance to fight him. The final round of the tournament soon arrives, and the last match is Alan versus Krina. The two immediately rush toward each other and begin clashing swords. Watching from the sidelines, Cecil quickly notices that Alan's swordsmanship has become much sharper than it was the last time they fought. Krina then begins using her sword lord skills to pressure Alan. Her attacks become so fierce that Alan is forced to fight with everything he has just to keep up with her. Seeing an opening, Krina unleashes her powerful pyroblast attack. The explosion hits Alan head-on, causing everyone watching to believe the match is finally over. After all, pyroblast is powerful enough to defeat even a rank monsters. However, before anyone can celebrate, Alan suddenly bursts through the smoke. In a single movement, he closes the distance and places the tip of his sword against Krina's neck, making it clear that he has won the duel. Alan tells Krina that she made a rookie mistake. She let her guard down the moment she believed the fight was already over, and that single mistake cost her the match. Krina feels frustrated about losing in such a simple way, but she is also proud of how much stronger Alan has become since they first met. As they walk back inside, Alan reminds Krina that she still has one more battle left against Diverg. He also tells her that, unlike last year, she has become much stronger, and now has a much better chance of defeating him. Krina remembers that Diverg has been stuck at level 60 for a long time and comments that it must be frustrating to stop getting stronger. Alan immediately responds by giving her a light headbutt. He tells her not to focus so much on levels, because they are not the most important thing. What truly matters is overcoming the challenge standing right in front of her. Not long after that, Krina's match against Diverg begins. As they exchange blows, Diverg quickly notices that Krina hits much harder than before. Even so, her strength is still not enough to defeat him, and he easily knocks her away with a powerful swing of his sword. Realizing she has no other choice, Krina activates her limit break extra skill. The moment she does, her entire demeanor changes. She charges straight at Diverg with incredible speed and lands a series of heavy attacks that are powerful enough to knock him to the ground. Everyone watching is left completely shocked after seeing Diverg get knocked down. For a moment, they begin wondering if the impossible has finally happened, and whether Diverg has actually lost. But Diverg has no intention of being defeated so easily. He activates his own extra skill and raises his sword high above his head before bringing it down in a devastating overhead slash. Krina reacts just in time, raising her own sword to block the attack as the two blades collide with tremendous force. Helmios turns out to be the one who blocked the attack, and he tells Diverg to calm down because he almost killed Krina. Diverg is left completely shocked and starts wondering if he really lost control of himself while fighting a young girl like Krina. Krina walks over to check if Diverg is okay, but instead, he drops to his knees and admits that she defeated him. He then hands his legendary sword over to Krina before getting up and walking away, leaving her completely confused about what just happened. Since Diverg has admitted defeat, Krina is officially declared the winner of the match, and the entire crowd erupts into cheers. However, Krina does not celebrate with them because deep down, she knows that she lost to Diverg. Next up is the battle everyone has been waiting for, Alan versus Helmios. As the match begins, Alan notices that most of the crowd is cheering for Helmios. He understands why, because Helmios is seen as a symbol of hope for humanity. There are even rumors that the gods themselves sent him to save humanity from the demon lord and his forces. However, Alan does not care about any of that anymore. As far as he is concerned, Helmios is simply standing between him and the MP recovery ring. Alan plans to defeat him and wipe that confident smile off his face. Alan confidently tells Helmios that he should surrender now if he wants to avoid suffering too much pain the next morning. Helmios simply scoffs at the threat and assumes Alan must have spent a lot of time training for this battle. However, Helmios tells Alan that no matter how much training he has done, there is simply no way he can win. Helmios suddenly rushes forward and attacks. Alan manages to block and parry the strike, shocking everyone watching. It is an incredible feat considering how young Alan is. Even Helmios finds it strange. After looking at Alan's stats with his appraisal skill, he knows Alan should not have enough endurance to withstand his attacks for very long. Alan does not explain himself, but he secretly smiles because he understands the reason Helmios cannot figure it out. Helmios' appraisal skill cannot see the buffs Alan's summons are giving him. Helmios charges again and launches a series of attacks. Alan manages to parry every single one, but it is obvious that he is struggling. This is happening even though Helmios has not started using any of his skills yet. The crowd begins noticing that Alan is focusing on defending himself and not even attacking. Some spectators even start saying that Krina would have put up a better fight against Helmios. Alan eventually creates some distance between them and analyzes the situation. He realizes that he and Helmios are roughly equal when it comes to agility, meaning that simply fighting him normally will not be enough to win. Alan then summons his dragon. The sudden appearance catches Helmios completely off guard, giving Alan the opening he needs. Alan immediately takes advantage of the distraction and lands a powerful hit on Helmios, which leaves everyone watching in shock. Alan realizes that his attack managed to do some damage, but Helmios' armor still blocked a large part of it. Helmios immediately understands that this is the true power of a summoner, and instead of being worried, he becomes even more excited to see what else Alan can do. All his friends watching the battle are also impressed because Alan is now capable of summoning dragons. Keel quickly realizes what Alan is actually doing and figures out that Alan is using Helmios as a way to test out his new skills. The overseer then explains to the spectators that the dragon is one of Alan's skills, meaning the battle is completely fair and can continue. Alan decides to test the dragon even further and orders it to use Hellfire of Fury. The dragon unleashes a massive wave of fire toward Helmios. The attack covers a huge area, but Helmios manages to block the flames and then suddenly flies into the air. Alan is surprised because he had no idea that Helmios was capable of flying. The fire attack still manages to cause some damage, so Helmios uses healing magic to recover. Seeing this gives Alan another important piece of information. He realizes that he now knows 3 more of Helmios' abilities. Helmios then uses appraisal on Alan's dragon. He finds it strange that he cannot see the dragon's stats, but Alan does not bother answering his question. Instead, Alan simply thanks Helmios for creating some distance between them. Alan then summons several Wally blasters around Helmios. The weapons immediately fire, causing a massive explosion that nearly gives everyone in the audience a heart attack. When the smoke finally clears, Helmios emerges from the explosion, although he admits that the attack actually hurt him. Alan does not give him any time to recover. Without hesitation, he summons another group of Wally blasters and prepares to attack again. Seeing this, some of the higher-ups become worried and begin discussing whether they should stop the match because they fear Alan might actually kill Helmios. Helmios suddenly charges toward Alan with his sword. Alan manages to dodge the attack and immediately summons Serby to counter. However, Helmios effortlessly cuts Serby down with a single swing of his sword. The two continue exchanging attacks, with neither side willing to back down. Eventually, Helmios decides that it is time to stop holding back. He slowly walks toward Alan and tells him that if he wants to survive, he should surrender now. Alan refuses to back down because this is exactly the kind of attack he has been waiting for. Helmios' sword suddenly bursts into flames as he activates his powerful Phoenix Blade skill. Alan responds by summoning his dragon and Serby, but Helmios quickly cuts through both summons without slowing down. Helmios then charges directly toward Alan, completely confident that this attack will finally end the battle. But Alan has one more trick ready. He summons one of his defensive summons directly in front of himself. The summon blocks Helmios' attack, giving Alan the opening he needs. He immediately activates Reflect, sending an attack back at Helmios with the same power as Phoenix Blade. The reflected attack hits Helmios with incredible force and sends him flying backward. The entire audience gasps in shock at what just happened. Helmios crashes onto the ground and lies there for a moment. Despite being badly hurt, he gives a small smile because he realizes just how incredible Alan is. Alan had carefully calculated the entire situation and waited for the perfect moment to reflect his strongest attack. Helmios eventually gets back onto his feet, although he is clearly struggling to stand. After using healing magic on himself, a smile appears on his face. Seeing Alan's strength gives him hope that humanity still has a chance. Helmios remembers his years on the battlefield. There was a point where he had already reached the limits of his trials and could no longer find better equipment to obtain. Yet that did not make his life easier. He lost several of his closest comrades and watched the same tragedy happen again and again. He was repeatedly sent to the front lines, forced to fight through one battle after another. Everyone sees Helmios as humanity's hero, so he knows he is not allowed to simply give up. He has to keep fighting no matter how hopeless things become. Helmios then remembers a time when the Sovereign of Spirits gave him the MP ring and told him that it would become important when he eventually met the person who would restore his hope. Looking at Alan, Helmios realizes that person may have finally appeared. Helmios admits that Alan really is incredibly strong, but says he is now going to show Alan that they are still on completely different levels. He promises that only one more attack will be necessary to finish the battle. Helmios begins charging up his power and prepares to use his extra skill. The moment Alan sees what Helmios is doing, he starts to panic. He knows he is not prepared to deal with an extra skill and has no idea how much damage it could cause. Desperate to survive, Alan summons every defensive summon he has and wonders if they will actually be enough to protect him. Helmios then charges toward Alan with his strongest attack. The two weapons finally collide, but Alan's sword is instantly destroyed and completely vaporized. The force of the attack sends Alan crashing into a wall, and both of his arms are blown off in the process. Helmios is proud of the strength of his attack, believing he has finally proven the difference between them. But Alan is furious because he realizes that attack could have actually killed him. Alan quickly drinks several elven healing potions and uses them to regenerate his missing arms. Once his arms are fully restored, he summons another sword and gets back into position. Despite taking such a brutal attack, Alan makes it clear that he is nowhere near finished yet. Helmios tells Alan to stay down because it is obvious that he has already lost the battle, but Alan makes it clear that he is not going to give up that easily. He says that quitting only closes the door to victory, so as long as he can still fight, he refuses to stop. Helmios is impressed by Alan's determination and calmly asks him who he really is. Alan thinks about how the Demon Lord likes to call himself the Demon Lord of the End, so he decides to give himself a fitting name as well. He introduces himself to Helmios as Alan, the Summoner of the Beginning. Helmios is stunned when he hears the name, even though Alan literally came up with it on the spot. Helmios then suddenly appears in front of Alan and hands him the MP recovery ring. Alan is confused about why Helmios is simply giving him the ring. So Helmios explains that the Sovereign of Spirits specifically instructed him to give it to the Summoner of the Beginning. Alan is shocked when he realizes what this means. The requirement for unlocking the MP recovery ring was not some complicated condition after all. The key word was the requirement the entire time. Since Helmios already has another pair of the same rings, Alan decides to accept it. Helmios then asks Alan if he wants to continue fighting and have another round. However, Alan immediately surrenders. There is no reason for him to continue fighting now that he has finally obtained the ring he wanted. With Alan surrendering, Helmios is officially declared the winner of the battle. Alan then reunites with his party, and everyone is genuinely relieved to see that he is still safe and in one piece. They were worried about him after seeing how brutal the fight had become. About a week later, a reward ceremony is held at a hotel. Alan stands before Crown Prince Invel, who praises him for his incredible battle against Helmios. Invel even goes as far as saying that it might have been the greatest battle in the entire history of the Academy. However, Invel also brings up Granvel's secret. He explains that Granvel had kept Alan's identity as a summoner hidden all this time, so he will have to receive the proper punishment for hiding such important information. Hearing this, Alan immediately pulls out a hidden dagger and calmly tells Invel that he is a guest of the Granvel estate. Alan explains that during his time as a serf, Granvel helped him, and because of that, he owes him a debt of gratitude. Alan then makes it clear that he will not allow anything to happen to Granvel or his family. Invel looks genuinely frightened by Alan's words. Even after the king passed away and Invel eventually took the throne, he never experienced any real trouble from within the kingdom. Because of this, Alan assumes that Invel has taken his threat very seriously. About a month later, the no-life gamers successfully defeat the heavy dragon without even needing Krina to use her extra skill. While everyone is happy about the victory, Keel is especially excited about the treasure because it has been a very long time since they last found a gold treasure chest. Unfortunately, the treasure turns out to be another MP boost ring. Alan is not particularly impressed because he already has enough MP recovery equipment. Then, without warning, the dungeon system suddenly speaks and informs them that they have successfully defeated all 5 A rank dungeons. As a reward, their guild cards have now been upgraded, giving them access to S-rank dungeons. With this new access, Alan declares that their main goal for the new year will be to conquer an S-rank dungeon. However, their plans are soon thrown off course when they receive some completely unexpected news. The group arrive at the headmaster's office and learn they've been called to join the war by royal decree. However, Meru, Valmar, and Sophia are ordered to return home along with the other transfer students. Alan asks what's happening, and the headmaster reveals that the Demon Lord has gathered 10 million monsters to invade Rosenheim, the Baki's empire, and the central continent. Everyone is shocked because that's almost 10 times the number of monsters they normally see in a year. The headmaster explains that the Demon Lord usually attacks the central continent because it's the weakest, but after Helmios appeared, everything changed. A month ago, 3 million monsters invaded Rosenheim, capturing more than half the elves' territory. Sophia immediately asks about her mother, but the headmaster says the kingdom fell 3 days ago, and they don't know if the queen survived. Alan realizes the Demon Lord must have been secretly saving troops for years. He then asks why they're only hearing about the invasion now. The headmaster explains that the elves kept it secret because they didn't want human involvement. But now another demon army is heading toward Rosenheim. Sissel realizes they may have to fight 2 million monsters without healers, which seems impossible. The headmaster says Helmios will help, but Sissel doubts even he can protect everyone. Alan then asks where the remaining 4 million demons are. They've been spotted off the coast of the central continent. Cecil suggests they head to the Jematan Empire instead, since its fall could put the Radash kingdom next. Everyone looks to Alan for a decision. After thinking it over, Alan realizes they have only one choice. They must work together to save Rosenheim. That was episode 6. Subscribe to not miss the next part and watch the next video on screen.